He was one of the most infamous cannibals in American history, and when the father finally learned of the monstrous crimes his son had committed, the expression on his face became the most shocking moment in the entire series. The initial unease was a natural reaction of the flesh and blood, followed by a sigh, as if trying to compress an overwhelming guilt into a bearable weight. He tried hard to appear sorrowful, for as a father, sadness should have been the purest and most direct response to such a tragedy caused by his own son. Unwilling to give up, he tried again, yet no tears came out. That final, low sigh revealed the truth. He had long sensed the abnormality in his son, but chose to ignore it. At this moment, even his attempt to act sad seemed fake, and that hollow emotion felt colder than any weeping. This is the story of Jeffrey Dahmer, one of the most notorious serial killers and cannibals in American history. Even the most restrained narration remains more horrifying than any fictional crime story. The story begins in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 1991. One day, a woman next door heard Jeffrey leaving his apartment and quickly stopped him, complaining that the foul smell coming from his place had become unbearable.
Well, you know, I had that meat that went bad. And that little freezer I got.
No, you said that last week. And I saw you go out to the dumpster and throw out a whole bunch of bad meat, so the smell should be gone by now.
Jeffrey casually replied that his fish had died of a white spot disease and that he would clean it up over the weekend. As he spoke and slowly approached, Glenda felt a wave of inexplicable fear rising in her heart.
Anyway, they all caught it and died, and I'll clean it out this weekend.
Watching him walk away, she let out a quiet sigh of relief. Every time she faced Jeffrey, she felt uneasy, maybe because of the constant buzz of a saw or the never-ending stench coming from his room. Later, Jeffrey went to a bar, pretending to be a private photographer, offering $50 to anyone willing to come home with him for a photo shoot. A young man quickly agreed and followed him under the envious eyes of his friends. As soon as they entered Jeffrey's apartment, Tracy frowned from the overwhelming stench that filled the room. Jeffrey casually explained that the pork chops in his fridge had gone bad and quietly locked the door behind him. On the table, Tracy noticed a chainsaw with dried blood still on it, and a wave of unease surged within him. He suggested opening the window for some air, but Jeffrey refused, saying the window was broken and he hated the noise from the street. Then Jeffrey opened the fridge, poured some beer, and secretly mixed something into the drink. Tracy cautiously noticed a white foam forming on top and immediately questioned it. Jeffrey glanced at it and explained it was just dish soap residue, then drank from his own cup to make Tracy feel safe. Tracy only took a small sip, but found the taste unbearable and said he wanted to leave. But the prey had already fallen into the trap, and Jeffrey wasn't about to let him go. He lied, saying there was an air conditioner in the bedroom and that the smell would be weaker, coaxing Tracy to go inside. The moment Tracy stepped in, Jeffrey suddenly cuffed one of his hands. Realizing something was wrong, Tracy tried to scream, but Jeffrey covered his mouth. He struggled desperately, but Jeffrey grabbed his neck tightly. Then, Jeffrey picked up a machete and threatened him, forcing him to sit on the bed and watch a movie together, placing the blade on the table beside them. He told Tracy they would just watch a movie, take a few pictures, and then he would pay him. The mattress was stained with blood, and the large barrel in the corner felt like a silent warning.
Okay, quit doing that. I told you I'm gonna pay you. Stop trying to leave.
All Tracy could think about was how to avoid ending up inside that barrel. He pretended to cooperate, trying to flirt his way out to distract Jeffrey. Just as Jeffrey was lost in the moment, he picked up the knife again. Thinking fast, Tracy offered to let Jeffrey take any kind of photos he wanted, saying he could pose however he liked. They returned to the living room, where Tracy took off his shirt, showing his muscular body, twisting awkwardly while Jeffrey snapped a few pictures. Soon, Jeffrey got bored and coldly ordered him back to the bedroom to watch a horror movie. After a few minutes, Jeffrey suddenly made a strange request.
Okay, listen to your heartbeat. What? What are you doing there?
Taking advantage of the distraction, Tracy swung his arm and struck Jeffrey's head hard, then ran for the door with all his strength. But the door had several locks. As he fumbled to open them, Jeffrey charged forward, and the two wrestled violently. In panic, Tracy grabbed a jar and smashed it against Jeffrey's head, finally breaking free and rushing out of the apartment. Next door, Glenda opened her door only to see Jeffrey's cold face staring at her. She gasped and quickly locked herself inside, too terrified to make another sound. Tracy ran through the streets looking for the police. Jeffrey didn't chase him. He calmly closed his door, lit a cigarette, and sat in silence, waiting for what was about to come. Exhausted, Tracy finally flagged down a patrol car, breathing heavily, terrified. With the handcuff still hanging from his wrist glinting under the headlights, he tried to explain what had happened. The police approached cautiously, suspecting he was just a drugged-up street kid. But Tracy insisted someone had tried to kill him and took them back to Jeffrey's apartment. Facing the arrival of the police, Jeffrey explained everything calmly.
He and I were both, you wanted to play cops and robbers.
No, I didn't. Hey.
Hearing his story, the officers didn't want to get involved, only asking him to hand over the key to the cuffs. But as Jeffrey went to look for it, a sickening odor hit the officers. Jeffrey again claimed it was spoiled meat, but now they were suspicious and headed toward the bedroom. Inside the nightstand, the police not only found the key to the handcuffs, but also a stack of horrifying photographs, all showing posed images of dismembered bodies, some with their heads sawed off, others with their organs removed, scenes too gruesome to look at. Realizing he'd been exposed, Jeffrey tried to make a run for it, but the officer at the door pinned him down immediately. As they read him his rights, Jeffrey quietly muttered a single sentence.
What I did, I should be dead.
When backup arrived, Glenda next door couldn't hold back her anger any longer, shouting her frustration at the police who had ignored her warnings for so long. Jeffrey's father, Lionel, was summoned to the police station in the middle of the night, and his first question was whether his son was still alive.
Attempted murder. We'd just like to ask you some questions about him.
Murder? When you said on the phone there was a murder investigation, I thought someone might have tried to murder him.
It wasn't until he saw the serious expressions of the two detectives across from him that he finally realized what was happening.
He was a strange boy, but he was a quiet boy. He was a good boy. When his mother and I divorced, that was very hard on him. He just turned 18, he was living alone at the time. And I think being alone was very difficult for him.
After speaking, he apologized, saying he might have gotten too emotional. The detectives exchanged a look and asked if there was anything else he wanted to tell them. Lionel gathered his thoughts and began explaining the reasons behind his son's strange behavior.
When he was young, I think he was 4, he had a hernia operation. And he was never the same after that. I don't know if there was brain damage, too much anesthesia. It's haunted me.
When Lionel blamed it on brain damage caused by surgery, the detectives could hardly believe what they were hearing. Could brain damage really explain the actions of a serial killer?
Could you tell me a little bit about what he did? Tried to kill, I guess.
You're aware that your son is homosexual, yes?
Hearing that, Lionel became visibly uneasy. He took a sip of water, trying to steady himself.
Allegedly, he lured a man back to his apartment and tried to kill him. The man got away, and when the police arrived to arrest your son, well, they found various items around the apartment that indicate that your son has committed multiple murders.
He looked puzzled, unsure of what the police had actually found. One of the detectives warned him that what he was about to hear might be hard to accept, asking him to prepare himself mentally. Inside Jeffrey's refrigerator, they found a human head. In the freezer, there were 2 plastic bags, each containing a human heart, and another bag with a man's genitals. In the bedroom, there were 5 skulls, as well as knives, hammers, saws, and several photos documenting the process of dismemberment. In another drawer, police found an entire human skeleton that had been bleached clean. In the corner stood a large blue plastic barrel holding more than 200 liters of acid, inside of which were 3 torsos in varying stages of decay. There were also other body parts, some half dissolved, others stripped of flesh.
Debris on some of the cooking utensils we found, and the marks on some of the body parts, as well as things your son mentioned to us. We believe he ate some of his victims.
As if he had been experimenting on how to separate tissue from bone. Seeing Lionel's horrified face, the 2 detectives, understanding his situation, decided to let him sit alone for a while to calm down before continuing. He slowly took a sip of water, trying to compose himself. As a father, he knew he should have been heartbroken at this moment, but when faced with the monstrous crimes his son had committed, he realized he couldn't even pretend to be sad. He took a deep breath and tried once again to look pained, but he still couldn't do it. Regret and guilt wrapped around him like chains, making even the act of pretending to grieve impossible. That kind of emotion was more tragic than any loud wailing could ever be. Meanwhile, the police discovered more remains belonging to multiple victims inside Jeffrey's apartment. The news spread quickly, causing an uproar. The entire building was sealed off, and Glenda, along with all other residents, were forced to move out. Reporters rushed to the scene, suspecting it was an unprecedented massacre, but the police refused to reveal the exact number of victims. Public anger turned toward law enforcement. How could a man with a history of assault, still on parole, continue killing for years without being stopped? especially when so many neighbors had repeatedly reported him. Why hadn't the police acted? Jeffrey was taken to the station for questioning, yet even as the detectives interrogated him, he remained calm. Seeing his cooperation, one detective asked the 3 questions everyone wanted answered the most.
Why do you think you did it? Killed all these men. And why did you keep them?
Jeffrey fell silent for a moment, took a deep breath, and his eyes began to wander as he slowly recalled the twisted memories of his childhood. The time shifted back to 1966, when Jeffrey was only 6 years old. After school, he came home to find his baby brother crying helplessly in the crib from hunger. Their mother lay motionless on the bed, like a lifeless body. Panicking, little Jeffrey grabbed the phone and called for an ambulance. When Lionel rushed home, he showed no sign of worry or compassion for his wife. The constant fighting between his parents left young Jeffrey lost and confused. Lionel accused his wife of abusing pills and crying all day, while Joyce fired back, blaming him for always being away on business and neglecting his family, calling him unfit to be a father. Joyce sat silently on the edge of the bed, and Jeffrey didn't go near her. He quietly walked to the river alone. There, he found several tadpoles and carefully placed them in a glass jar. The next day was Teacher's Day. While other kids brought apples and gifts, Jeffrey gave that jar of tadpoles to Mrs. Hempsel. A student curiously asked why she received such a strange present, and Mrs. Hempsel could only reply that Jeffrey might be having troubles at home and needed someone to care about him. Then the student asked if he could take the jar of tadpoles, and Mrs. Hempsel, who didn't really like them and had no idea what to do with them, simply handed them over to him. When Jeffrey saw his heartfelt gift given away, his fragile emotions shattered instantly. Humiliated and mocked by others, Jeffrey secretly followed that student after school and stole the jar back. He returned to the river, poured used motor oil into the water, and watched silently as each tadpole died one by one. One day, Lionel found a dead possum in the basement. Its skull had been cracked open by a wild animal, yet it had managed to crawl into the basement before dying. Little Jeffrey stared at the corpse in confusion, wondering how it could still have moved after its head was broken. Seeing this, Lionel recalled an old college experiment and began to explain. He told his son that his professor once decapitated a frog and removed most of its brain, leaving only the small brainstem. To everyone's surprise, the frog could still breathe, and its heart continued to beat, but it couldn't think or feel anything. Then, the professor soaked a cotton ball in acid and placed it on what remained of the frog's brain.
The frog's hands try to wipe the cotton ball away, which, yeah, I know it shouldn't be able to do. The part of the brain that knows how to do that is gone. It's a fascinating thing, the brain.
Jeffrey listened with fascination. That scientific story seemed to open a whole new world inside his mind. Ever since his surgery 2 years earlier, Jeffrey had rarely shown interest in anything. Now that he was finally curious about something, his father saw an opportunity and suggested they go hunting together to study animal bodies. But Joyce strongly objected, and the argument between them grew intense once again. In America, however, dead animals by the roadside were a common sight. A few days later, father and son found a freshly killed animal near the highway. Lionel carefully explained its internal organs to Jeffrey and had him touch the still warm heart with his own hands. It was the first time Jeffrey had ever touched an animal's heart, and the first time he had been this close to death under his father's watchful eye.
Are you gonna leave?
No, we're gonna have dinner here in a bit.
No, I mean, are you and Mom gonna get divorced?
Lionel stood in silence for a long time, and in the end, he said nothing. He quietly turned around and left the room. From his father's expression, Jeffrey already knew the answer deep down. He began instinctively projecting the missing fatherly love onto those brief moments of closeness he shared with his father while dissecting animals. Time soon passed to 1981. Jeffrey was now an adult, but life was still a struggle. He had changed jobs many times, but always ended up getting fired. Living alone, Jeffrey moved to Miami to start over. Every weekend he would call home, and one day, unable to hold back anymore, he told his father over the phone that he had never truly wanted to leave. It was only because his father insisted he face the real world that he ended up in Miami.
Dad, can I please come home?
Although Jeffrey returned to Milwaukee, his father didn't let him live with him again. Instead, he arranged for Jeffrey to stay with his grandmother.
Before we go in, I just want to make myself very clear. You understand? This ain't easy street. You're 21 years old. You flunked out of college and you got kicked out of the army. There's no more free rides. There's no drinking. You're gonna get yourself a full-time job, and you're gonna help your grandma around the house. You got that?
Jeffrey found a job in the back kitchen of a meat processing shop. The boss, seeing how skillfully he handled the meat, told him to come back tomorrow wearing formal clothes. But while shopping for clothes, Jeffrey caught sight of a mannequin with a sculpted six-pack, and he couldn't take his eyes off it. He quietly hid inside a fitting room and waited until the mall closed that night. When the lights went out, he stepped out of the fitting room, undressed the mannequin, and took it home with him. Back in his room, Jeffrey locked the door, assembled the mannequin on his bed, and held it tightly in his arms. The next day, Jeffrey told his grandmother she didn't need to make his bed anymore. She agreed, but after her grandson left, she quietly opened the door and was startled to see a raised figure under the blanket on his bed. When Jeffrey came home and realized the mannequin was missing, he rushed to ask his grandmother what happened. She calmly told him she loved him no matter what, but advised him to pray in church and seek forgiveness and redemption from Jesus.
Where is my fucking mannequin? I told you not to go in there! That is my room! That is my stuff! So fucking tell me where it is!
I don't think it's healthy!
After a brief silence, she admitted she had thrown the mannequin away, saying it wasn't healthy for him, and that the garbage men had already taken it that afternoon.
You threw it away?
Yes.
God damn it!
Years later, when the most notorious serial killer and cannibal in American history was finally captured, Jeffrey Dahmer would say one haunting sentence.
I think I just wanted him to still be around. Little pieces of him being everywhere, you know, surrounding me. I know that sounds horrible.
That he was born a monster. The story then rewinds to 1959 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. At that time, his mother, Joyce, was already pregnant with him, while his father spent most of the year traveling for work, leaving her alone in an empty house. Loneliness and anxiety slowly broke down Joyce's mental health. She often fell into obsessive thoughts and relied on medication to stabilize her emotions. One snowy night while driving home, Lionel saw a figure in pajamas sitting on a bench at the bus stop. For a moment, he thought he was hallucinating.
Joyce?
Joyce was 28 weeks pregnant then, only 3 months away from giving birth. Her emotions were unstable and unpredictable. During a checkup, the doctor advised her to relax and imagine the warmth of family life after the baby's birth. But when he reviewed her medication list, he discovered she had been taking excessive amounts of drugs, including hormonal ones. Faced with the doctor's concern, Lionel reluctantly admitted that this was the real reason he had brought his wife in for an examination. He feared the hormones might harm the baby. Joyce tried to argue back. The doctor, unable to stand their constant bickering, finally interrupted and said Joyce's condition was a result of hormonal imbalance during pregnancy. He told them it was normal and temporary and that she should try to reduce her dependency on medication. Joyce only wanted the pregnancy to end soon so she could go back to her old life.
Some women actually enjoy pregnancy. I know that. I feel so guilty that I don't.
It'll be over soon enough.
But that night, when Lionel came home, he saw his wife still popping pills as if they were candy. It was under these conditions that little Jeffrey was born. By 1977, Jeffrey was 17 and already in high school. One day, his father took him fishing and carefully asked if there was a girl he liked or if he was curious about relationships. Jeffrey avoided the question, clearly uncomfortable, showing more interest in dissecting animals than in talking about love. After his father cleaned the fish they caught, Jeffrey said he wanted to try it himself. He slit open the fish's belly and curiously examined its organs. That night, while Jeffrey was in his room looking at a magazine, the sound of his parents fighting once again came from the kitchen. Recently, his mother had become obsessed with UFOs, even driving out without warning to chase after them. When Lionel confronted her, Joyce accused him of not believing her, saying he must think she was crazy, and she even grabbed a knife in anger. Jeffrey returned to his room, no longer interested in the magazine. Instead, he kept thinking about the strange satisfaction he'd felt while dissecting the fish earlier. To his classmates, Jeffrey was always a strange one. The boy he secretly liked once asked him to imitate a person with a mental disability in front of everyone. After the others laughed and praised him, Jeffrey remembered his parents' fight from the night before. This time, though, his classmates looked confused, thinking he was even weirder than before. The biology class was Jeffrey's favorite subject. The teacher gave each group of students a small pig and asked them to try dissecting it to learn about the structure of an animal's body. The girl paired with Jeffrey looked disgusted and quickly raised her hand, saying she was a vegetarian. Jeffrey followed the teacher's instructions, but instinctively pulled out the heart first. After class, the teacher praised his focus and attention to detail. Jeffrey asked if he could take one of the pigs home to practice. The teacher was stunned, saying that in more than 20 years of teaching biology, no student had ever asked that question before. Later, Jeffrey approached the boy he liked and invited him to come over after school to dissect the pig together.
Are you fucking kidding me? No.
Not long after, Jeffrey's parents divorced. Because Lionel was always away for work, custody of Jeffrey and his brother went to their mother. The ruling made Lionel sad, but only for about 3 seconds. His expression of pain was nothing more than an act. Joyce, however, didn't want Jeffrey. She only wanted the younger son, telling Jeffrey she had already prepared dinner for him in the fridge.
You can't just leave me here.
You're always in your room. You haven't had a nice word for me in years. Cut this shit, Jeff. You don't want a mother. You don't want me. You're just like your father. You got what you wished for.
Her words left Jeffrey speechless. Alone in the house, he desperately sought new ways to fill the emptiness of lost affection. He began working out obsessively and drinking heavily, trying to fill the void inside with strength and alcohol. On his way home, he often saw a muscular young jogger running confidently under the sun. Jeffrey was captivated, imagining the two of them laughing and drinking together, even picturing dissolving animal organs in acid to satisfy the dark urges hidden in his mind. After long hesitation, a disturbing thought finally surfaced. He wanted to bring that boy home. So he took a baseball bat and hid along the jogging path. When the runner appeared, Jeffrey mustered the courage to rush forward. In his imagination, the boy went home with him, and they drank beer together.
Mom said she'd be gone like 2 weeks. That was 3 months ago. I don't know where she is. Well, you're here now.
But in reality, the moment the boy saw someone charging at him with a bat, he turned and ran in fear. The fantasy shattered, and Jeffrey sank further into despair and self-indulgence. He began showing up late to class and even drank beer openly in the classroom. Seeing this, his school counselor called him in for a talk, urging him not to let his parents' divorce destroy his life. Jeffrey mentioned that his new hobby was fitness, and the counselor encouraged him to keep exploring that interest. After school one day, Jeffrey met a muscular young man standing by the road, trying to hitch a ride. The man said he was heading to a concert but still had some time before it started. Seeing an opportunity, Jeffrey invited him to his house to hang out first, promising they could drink some beer, lift weights, and later he would personally drive him to the concert.
What's your name?
Jeff.
I'm Steven.
The young man named Steven followed Jeffrey home, and they worked out, drank, and talked like old friends. But when there was only an hour left before the concert, Steven realized Jeffrey had no intention of leaving. Steven said he didn't want to miss the concert. Jeffrey told him to relax, then suddenly tried to kiss him, startling Steven, who shoved him away. Seeing Jeffrey keep making excuses, Steven thought he was lying to him. Enraged, Jeffrey grabbed a dumbbell plate and struck him on the head. Steven fell to the ground, dazed and unable to get up. When Jeffrey came to his senses, Steven was no longer breathing. His first thought wasn't about the fact that he had killed someone, but that if his parents ever found out, they would never forgive him. In a panic, Jeffrey dragged Steven's body to the basement and hid it there. But when he returned to his room, fear and unease began to gnaw at him from within. After a long internal struggle, he finally made up his mind to destroy the evidence. Jeffrey dragged the body out of the basement and carried it to the workbench in the garage, the same table where he usually prepared animal specimens. He took out the electric saw from his house and cruelly dismembered the body. Afterward, he loaded the remains into his car, planning to dump them somewhere remote. But on the way, he unexpectedly ran into 2 patrolling police officers. The officers smelled alcohol in the car and noticed several bulging black garbage bags in the back seat, immediately growing suspicious.
My parents just got divorced, and I can't really sleep, so I just do yard work, and I drop them at the dump.
You're 18, is that right? So you got your whole life ahead of you.
Thinking quickly, Jeffrey lied, saying they were just lawn clippings from the yard. One of the officers looked at him and, with a hint of sympathy in his tone, told him not to let drunk driving ruin his future. They decided to let him go with a warning, ordering him to drive straight home and not linger outside. Only after the officers left did Jeffrey's tightly wound nerves suddenly snap. Since he couldn't dispose of the body, he returned home and cut it into smaller pieces, flushing the flesh down the toilet. The bones, still damp and difficult to crush, he baked in the oven until dry, then smashed them with a hammer and ground them into fine powder. Finally, he quietly scattered the ashes in the backyard, wanting the person he liked to stay with him in another form.
I do think I was born like this. I don't think there was something that happened that made me like this. And it didn't happen again for 9 years.
Later, Jeffrey spoke about the psychologist the police had arranged for him. The doctor concluded that he suffered from a mental disorder known as visceral fetishism.
This compulsion that you struggled with all the time. How did you wait those 9 years in between? Or why?
I was trying to be a good boy.
Time moved on to 1978, the year Jeffrey graduated from high school. When the school's top students lined up for their graduation photo, Jeffrey sneaked into the last row. It wasn't until the yearbook was printed that the student council realized this poor-performing student had appeared in the photo. When Jeffrey proudly received his copy of the yearbook, he discovered that his face in the photo had been scribbled out in black ink. After being out of contact with his parents for 3 months, his father finally returned home with his new wife, Sherry, only to find Jeffrey alone in the house surrounded by empty beer cans.
Where'd she go? I don't know. Well, when did she leave?
Like 3 months ago.
I'm sorry, what? It's always been the same with her. The only person she's ever thought of is herself. And here she's leaving an 18-year-old boy alone in a house. Nobody to cook for him or anything. God knows what you've been eating. Honestly, it's criminal.
Lionel was furious, calling his ex-wife's abandonment of their son a crime, conveniently ignoring the fact that he himself had vanished for 3 months after remarrying. When asked what college Jeffrey planned to attend, he was shocked to learn that his son hadn't applied anywhere. Jeffrey explained that he had wanted to study medicine, but the grades required were too high.
Well, what about community college?
Community college, that's like for failures.
Well, I mean, that might be where we're at.
Lionel's casual remark about it struck like a cold nail, pinning Jeffrey firmly in the place of a failure.
I'm not a good kid. Dad, I'm not a normal guy. I don't fit in. I'm weird. I'm different.
Lionel seemed to sense it, yet deliberately avoided the heavy subject, unwilling to face the crack in his son's heart. Instead, he cut him off, laughing as he shared an idea of his own.
We're gonna get you into Ohio State. Yeah, I'll even pay for the first semester.
Oh.
Got a great science. What do you think?
Jeffrey's fragile courage to speak was crushed once again. Not long after, Lionel was called to the school for a disciplinary meeting.
Is Jeff going to class?
No.
It's all these morning classes. I can't wake up for them.
Jeff's GPA is a 0.45.
Oh, Jesus.
We're gonna get those grades up.
Mr. Dahmer, you don't understand. Jeff has been expelled.
You're going in the army.
Months later, Jeffrey returned home dressed in military uniform. His father and stepmother greeted him at the door, but when Jeffrey reached out for a hug, Lionel instinctively pulled back and offered a handshake instead. Jeffrey had been trained as a medic, and after completing basic training, he might have become a field doctor. His father and stepmother were proud of him. What they didn't know was that Jeffrey had learned more than just medical care in the Army. He had also gained access to a variety of sedatives. One day, he secretly stole several pills from the pharmacy, crushed them with a spoon, and mixed the powder into a drink before tricking a fellow soldier into consuming it. Before long, Jeffrey was discharged from the Army. His furious father sent him to live with his grandmother.
And I just want to make myself very clear. There's no drinking. You're going to get yourself a full-time job, and you're going to help your grandma around the house. You got that?
One night, his grandmother took out a wooden box containing photos of Lionel's childhood awards to show Jeffrey, but it was the lockable box itself that caught his attention.
I didn't want a ribbon for anything my whole life. Like a bad egg.
Jeff Dahmer, you look at me. There isn't a thing wrong with you that we can't fix. I think you just need to find a nice girl, that's all.
She advised him to attend church with her every week, believing that drinking, isolation, and self-indulgence were temptations pulling him off the right path.
You're a good boy, Jeff. You're every bit as good as your father. You just have different challenges than he did. Everybody's got something different they're fighting with. You're good deep down, Jeff. You may not believe it, but I sure do.
Thanks, Grandma.
One day, she discovered a mannequin with chiseled abs hidden beneath Jeffrey's blanket. Disgusted, she decided it was unhealthy and threw it away. The incident deeply wounded Jeffrey.
God damn it!
That night, he quietly apologized to his grandmother, insisting he wasn't that kind of person.
I think I just want a friend.
Well, I accept your apology, but I don't like the cursing.
When a TV commercial for the state fair came on, his grandmother suggested he go, hoping he might make new friends there. At the fair, Jeffrey drank heavily and fell into hallucinations. He mistook a mannequin for the deceased Stephen and, in full view of the crowd, indulged his most hidden desire. He was arrested on the spot. When word reached his boss at the butcher shop, Jeffrey lost his job. Later, he applied to a private hospital and, with his experience as an Army medic, was quickly hired. His grandmother was relieved. That night, when she asked why he wasn't eating cake, Jeffrey brushed it off, saying he wasn't hungry. But once back in his room, he took several blood bags he had stolen from the hospital, carefully cut them open, and drank the dark red liquid straight from the pouch. That strange sense of satisfaction began to spread quietly through him. With a steady job, Jeffrey started frequenting bars and clubs where he made a few friends. After each gathering, he would ask them to stay, but they always refused and walked away. Loneliness and rejection drove him to go out drinking even more often. Desperate to keep people from leaving, he began slipping drugs into their drinks, making them fall asleep beside him. After several incidents, a motel owner noticed something was off and, fearing a tragedy, blacklisted Jeffrey from the premises. But Jeffrey couldn't stop. Driven by his impulses, he found a new target, a man named Tuomi. This time, he spent a large sum to take Tuomi to a high-end hotel. As usual, he laced the drink with sedatives, hoping to make him pass out. But by mistake, Jeffrey drank the wrong glass himself. As dizziness overcame him, he fought to stay conscious long enough to pour another drink for Tuomi. In the end, both of them lost consciousness. The next morning, when Jeffrey woke up, the sight before him shattered him completely. Tuomi's head was injured, and he was no longer breathing. Jeffrey desperately tried to perform CPR, but it was already too late. 9 years had passed since his last killing, and now he had once again taken a life by accident. After a brief wave of guilt and panic, Jeffrey gradually calmed down. He walked out of the hotel and bought a large suitcase, then hid Tuomi's body inside. When his grandmother went out to buy groceries, he drove the car into the garage and carried the suitcase down to the basement. At dinner, he casually asked about her plans for the next day, while secretly calculating how to finish his work without her noticing. The next morning, as soon as his grandmother left home, Jeffrey rushed into the kitchen and grabbed a sharp kitchen knife. When night fell, he picked up the severed head from the table and studied it carefully. It was wrapped tightly in transparent plastic, as if life still lingered within it. With a disturbingly gentle gaze, Jeffrey carefully placed the head inside the wooden box. In his mind this way, the person he loved could stay by his side forever. The night before, the sound of Jeffrey handling Tuomi's body caught his grandmother's attention, but he excused it by saying he was just mixing chocolate. One day, Jeffrey noticed an obituary in the newspaper featuring a handsome man, someone exactly his type.
And I decided I was going to dig him up. I just wanted to lay with him. It didn't work. It was March and the ground was too hard and it would have taken forever, so...
He later confessed that he often regretted that moment, thinking that if things had gone differently, perhaps none of what followed would have happened. The police couldn't understand why Jeffrey would dig up a body. Normal people simply wouldn't do that.
I hoped that he could be somebody that wanted to see a movie that I wanted to see.
You wanted to control these guys.
Everybody was always telling me what to do. You know, my dad, my grandma, my bosses. The guys were just the one thing in my life that I could control.
During interrogation, Jeffrey admitted that aside from Stephen and Tuomi, whose deaths were accidental, every other victim was killed deliberately. The police were puzzled and wanted to know what had caused him to turn into a calculated serial killer. Jeffrey fell into his memories. After Tuomi's accidental death, his drinking became even worse. But drinking alone only deepened his loneliness. So he began visiting bars more often, searching for new targets. Whenever he met someone he liked, he would bring them back to his grandmother's house and secretly slip drugs into their drinks, making them fall asleep. Once they were completely unconscious, he would strangle them. Jeffrey explained that he didn't want his victims to suffer, that putting them to sleep first was, in his mind, a gentle farewell. During the time he lived with his grandmother, he killed 3 people. However, Detective Murphy didn't believe his claim. The apartment where Jeffrey was later arrested was in a high-crime area with weak police presence, a place where it was easier to hide and hunt. Murphy believed that wasn't a coincidence, but Jeffrey insisted he had chosen the location simply because the rent was cheap. After killing at his grandmother's house, he usually handled the bodies in the basement. His grandmother was old and had trouble walking, so she rarely went downstairs, giving him a safe space to work. But one day, the stench of decay grew so strong that it reached the upper floor, arousing her suspicion. To cover up the truth, Jeffrey wrapped the remains in 3 layers of garbage bags and explained that he had been dissecting small animals to study their biological structure. In reality, what he was studying was how to make bodies disappear completely.
I'd soak some parts in acid or sometimes just boil them till the flesh came off.
The police suspected he suffered from schizophrenia, but Jeffrey firmly denied it. He recalled that twice, when he had brought someone home, his grandmother had accidentally seen them. She had stood silently at the staircase corner, saying nothing. After she discovered the human mannequin hidden under his blanket and threw it away herself, she began deliberately avoiding him. Part of it was to respect his privacy, but deep down she might have been refusing to face the truth, that her grandson was attracted to men. As summer came, the smell of decay from the basement grew stronger, spreading throughout the entire house. Unable to bear it any longer, his grandmother finally confronted him, demanding to know what he was doing down there. Jeffrey calmly lied, saying he had found the source of the odor. It was a raccoon that had died under the porch. The space was too narrow for him to reach, which was why the smell had spread. His grandmother was half convinced, but didn't question him further.
I think maybe she was deliberately not seeing it.
One day, while cleaning the house, she accidentally stumbled upon Jeffrey's altar, a disturbing and eerie display. She was terrified and immediately called Lionel, asking him to come over and see what Jeffrey was doing. But when Lionel arrived and went into the basement, everything had already been cleaned spotless. Jeffrey explained calmly that he was simply interested in anatomy and was making small animal specimens out of scientific curiosity. Lionel was uneasy, but didn't press the issue. After all, it was he who had first taught Jeffrey how to preserve animals. As he turned to leave, he caught a glimpse of what seemed to be faint, reddish-brown stains lingering around the edge of the drain.
It's one of my experiments. I was just using chemicals to try to melt the flesh.
Lionel warned Jeffrey never to experiment with animal corpses again. After that, Jeffrey stopped for several months. During that time, he was deeply afraid. Every time he heard sirens nearby, he thought the police were coming to arrest him, but no one ever came. He even followed the local news, yet there were never any reports of missing people.
So then I thought that if I was careful, I wasn't going to get caught.
One day, Jeffrey saw a man by the roadside whose car had broken down. The man was muscular and handsome, exactly Jeffrey's type. Jeffrey approached him and offered to help fix the car. After chatting for a while, he lied, saying he needed to go home to get some tools and invited the man to come with him. Out of trust, the man, whose name was Ronald, agreed and followed Jeffrey back to his grandmother's house. Once inside, Jeffrey made coffee for Ronald and secretly added something to his cup. Before long, Ronald began to feel dizzy, his consciousness fading. Just as Jeffrey was about to act, footsteps echoed from upstairs. His grandmother came down and saw a stranger slumped on the couch, asking Jeffrey what was going on. Jeffrey quickly explained that his friend had simply had too much to drink and that he was helping him sober up. Looking at Ronald's condition, she frowned, and her intuition told her this wasn't just simple drunkenness. She refused to go back upstairs and insisted on staying to watch over Ronald until he woke up. She even suggested that if he really didn't feel well, they should take him to the hospital immediately. But Ronald never woke up the next morning. In her heart, she sensed that Jeffrey had done something terrible again, yet she couldn't bring herself to believe it, nor face the truth. She chose to look away, pretending it was an accident. In the end, she didn't call the police or take Ronald to the hospital. Instead, she let Jeffrey carry him out to a passing bus. The bus rattled along the road, and from the moment Ronald got on until it reached the last stop, he never fully regained consciousness. The driver noticed he was still asleep and had no choice but to wake him when they arrived at the terminal. Half awake and disoriented, Ronald stumbled off the bus, his mind still hazy. He wandered aimlessly until he finally collapsed in a cornfield. When he opened his eyes again, he was lying on a hospital bed. After an examination, the doctor suspected he had overdosed on illicit substances, but Ronald firmly denied ever taking any and repeatedly insisted that someone had drugged him. Once discharged, he immediately went to the police to file a report. The police subsequently approached Jeffrey for questioning. Faced with the accusation, Jeffrey remained calm and composed. He denied everything, claiming that Ronald's car had broken down and that, out of kindness, he had invited him home to rest. Since Ronald had drunk too much and couldn't drive safely, Jeffrey said he had let him sleep on the couch for the night. He even added that his grandmother had been downstairs with them the entire time. With his grandmother's testimony confirming his story, the police concluded it was just a misunderstanding. Although Jeffrey had a prior record, it didn't necessarily mean he would commit another crime. And so, through one stroke of luck after another, he kept slipping through the cracks, sinking deeper into the abyss. With no evidence to prove his claim, Ronald had no choice but to leave the station. A few days later, when Ronald passed by a bar, he saw Jeffrey with his arm around another man, ready to leave. He rushed forward and warned the man to stay away from Jeffrey. With his plan ruined, Jeffrey trembled with rage, his eyes burning with hatred, as if he were about to tear Ronald apart. But with too many people around, he was forced to suppress his fury and walk away. The bar incident made Jeffrey restrain himself for a while, but soon he set his sights on another bar. This time, his target was a young Asian man. The man stumbled out of Jeffrey's grandmother's house in terror, trying to escape. Jeffrey chased him to the doorway, waving money in an attempt to lure Somsak back, but Somsak shook his head and ran desperately. Just as Jeffrey was about to go after him, his grandmother, seeing the scene from upstairs, banged on the window, forcing him to stop. Somsak soon fell unconscious at home and was rushed to the hospital by his family. The police launched an investigation. Jeffrey was charged with second-degree assault. In court, he argued that it had all been a drunken mistake. This made the judge think of his own grandson, who had once struggled with drinking, but turned his life around and opened a laundry business. He believed Jeffrey could do the same.
Now, you are not the kind of guy who belongs in the correction system, okay? You need a second chance. And this is your lucky day because I'm going to give it to you. And on the other side of this, hopefully, you will have learned your lesson and you'll get your act together. Now, I see that you have steady employment, so the court is willing to grant you work release of up to 40 hours per week when you finish your work.
Even Jeffrey himself was stunned by the judge's leniency. The judge went so far as to promise that his employer would never be informed, allowing Jeffrey to keep his job. After the trial, Jeffrey and his father returned to his grandmother's house. Jeffrey's $2,500 bail was paid by his grandmother. His stepmother reminded him to repay her once he had the means to do so. But Jeffrey argued shamelessly, claiming that Somsak had set him up. He said he had only taken a few photos, but the boy had turned on him and tried to extort money. Later that evening, Lionel brought up the old wooden box that held family photos and medals, asking Jeffrey to return the keepsakes inside. The moment he heard this, Jeffrey's heart tightened. Inside that box was the preserved head of one of his victims. He tried to stay calm and pretended to look for the box, mumbling that he couldn't find the key. His father, thinking Jeffrey was hiding gay magazines, scolded him harshly and demanded he open it at once. Seeing Jeffrey still making excuses to stall, Lionel turned and went downstairs to get some tools, planning to pry open the box himself. But by the time Lionel returned, the head had been removed, replaced by a few adult magazines. On the way home, Lionel spoke to Sherry about Jeffrey. His voice was heavy, filled with exhaustion and helplessness. He truly couldn't understand how the once well-behaved boy he had raised had become this person. In truth, Jeffrey had shown signs of danger many times before, but each time he managed to explain them away with convincing excuses. When he was discharged from the army, he said it was just because of a drunken fight. When his grandmother found a male mannequin in his bed, he claimed it was a dare from a friend. When he exposed himself at the fair, he said he was drunk and thought he was standing at a urinal. And when accused of assaulting a teenager, he insisted he was framed, saying the boy had tricked him while posing for photos. Somsak's father tried to seek justice for his son in court, but unable to speak English and without the means to hire a lawyer, his plea was dismissed by the judge as nothing more than an emotional outburst. The original verdict stood unchanged. After Jeffrey was sent to prison, Lionel fell into deep self-blame. He couldn't stop thinking that he had been too negligent as a father, and that if he had realized something was wrong earlier, things might never have come to this. So he wrote a letter to the judge, pleading for Jeffrey to receive alcohol rehabilitation while in prison, hoping his son could use that time to find himself again. But a year later, when Jeffrey was released, he casually said he had never attended any therapy at all. Instead, he said he preferred to be alone. Hearing this, Lionel said nothing more. He simply told Jeffrey to put his luggage in the car. After his son left, Lionel quietly walked to the corner of the wall and leaned against the cold concrete, crushed by a suffocating sense of helplessness. After his release, Jeffrey didn't return to his grandmother's home. He rented a small apartment and began living alone. That night, in a dimly lit bar, he met a deaf young man named Tony. When Tony was a child, he had been hospitalized with pneumonia, and a doctor's prescription error caused him to lose his hearing permanently. Since then, he had lived in a world of silence. Although his family had never rejected him, people at bars and social gatherings often gave him strange looks. Whenever others found out he was deaf, they would find excuses to distance themselves. That night, Tony met Jeffrey at the bar. He wrote his name and the fact that he was deaf on a piece of paper and handed it to him. Jeffrey smiled after reading it. In his mind, a deaf man would be easier to control. He wouldn't scream or make a sound. But what happened next took him by surprise. While they were dancing, Tony suddenly took Jeffrey's hand and placed it on his chest. For a moment, Jeffrey froze. It was the first time anyone had ever invited him to feel their heartbeat. The warmth of that steady rhythm made him forget his darker urges for a fleeting moment. That night, Jeffrey had planned to drug Tony like he always did. but he couldn't bring himself to do it. After a long hesitation, for the first time, he chose to stop. Jeffrey fought against his buried impulses and began forming a genuine friendship with Tony. They went shopping together and shared meals. Tony even took Jeffrey to the studio and asked him to take photos of him. During that time, Jeffrey seemed truly changed. He smiled more and stopped drinking every night. When his father and stepmother came to visit, they saw that his home was clean and organized, and for the first time in years, they felt a sense of comfort.
Dad, I want to thank you. I promise things are turning around for me. I got a promotion at work, a little more pay, new friend in my life.
Jeff.
Lionel listened to him and couldn't hold back his tears, relieved to see his son finally turning his life around. After dating Tony for a while, Jeffrey brought him home. He once again restrained the dark desires in his heart and didn't drug him. But the next morning, Tony said he had to go to the city for a week-long work trip. A sudden panic gripped Jeffrey. He anxiously asked Tony when he would see him again. Tony patiently explained that he was going to work in the city and wrote on a note that he would return the following week, promising not to disappear like before. Behind his back, Jeffrey's hand clenched tightly around a hammer, but in the end, he still couldn't bring himself to act. The next day, Tony's mother went to the police, reporting that her son had vanished after promising to spend the weekend with his family. His workplace hadn't seen him either. The truth was, shortly after Tony left, there was a knock on Jeffrey's door. Because he had forgotten his car keys, Tony came back. But Jeffrey's need for control resurfaced, consuming his mind once again. He crumpled Tony's note into a ball and tossed it to the floor. Soon after, Tony collapsed onto the bed and lost his life forever. Tony's mother went to the police to file a report, but it was of no use. So she and her family printed missing posters and organized search parties to look for her son. When Jeffrey passed by and saw the scene, he even stopped to donate some money. For a moment, he wanted to approach Tony's mother and say something, but when he noticed a man nearby who had once seen him and Tony together, he quickly changed his mind and walked away without a word. Jeffrey spiraled into madness, drinking heavily and shouting in rage. Finally, he pulled out a thick stack of his victims' ID cards, chose one at random, and called the victim's family.
Is this a family of Errol Lindsay?
Yes, I'm his sister. Who's this?
You should stop looking for him. He's gone now.
Tony's mother was still deeply worried about her missing son. The day before he disappeared, she had seen a TV report about the rising spread of illness and warned him to be careful. Tony promised that before leaving town the next day, he would stop by to say goodbye. But she never imagined that her son would end up as Jeffrey's next victim. Jeffrey carefully selected the most tender and elastic piece of flesh, gently placed it into a pan, and seared it on both sides until it was half cooked. He picked up his knife and fork, his expression solemn, as if performing a sacred ritual. Then he cut off a small piece, lifted it with his fork, and slowly placed it in his mouth, closing his eyes to savor the taste. For him, it was not only a satisfaction of taste, but also a symbol of possession and eternity. In that moment, he felt as if the victim's soul had entered his body, merging with him completely, never to be separated again. After Jeffrey gave the police a detailed account of his years of killings, the officers contacted an Asian family to inform them that their child had been killed. And the victim's older brother was the same young man who, years ago, had caused Jeffrey to be sentenced to 1 year in prison, yet still allowed to keep his job. By 1991, Jeffrey had killed again. The body of his latest victim hadn't even gone cold before he was already out looking for his next target. Outside a convenience store, a group of young men were complaining that the clerk wouldn't sell them beer. Jeffrey bought a few bottles himself, pretending he was throwing a party, and invited one of the boys to come along. During their conversation, the boy, named Konarak, mentioned that he recognized Jeffrey. His older brother Samsak had once crossed paths with him. Jeffrey had taken photos of his brother, and something inappropriate had happened between them. Samsak had even gone to the police afterward and filed a report. Jeffrey explained that he had paid Samsak $100 to take a few provocative photos, but the boy had run off with the money and falsely accused him. This time, Jeffrey said he wanted to do the same with Konarak, offering to pay half the money up front. Konarak agreed, and Jeffrey secretly slipped drugs into his beer. Moments after drinking it, Konarak collapsed unconscious. Jeffrey carried him into the bedroom, took off his clothes, and started taking photos while watching a movie. Jeffrey noticed the beer was almost gone, so he went out to buy more. While he was gone, Konarak, fighting through dizziness, managed to escape from the apartment. Glenda, the neighbor next door, saw him, and immediately called the police. When Jeffrey returned and saw the officers, he calmly explained that Conorak was his boyfriend, that he had just had too much to drink, and that they lived together. When the police asked Conorak's age, Jeffrey lied and said he was 19. The officers didn't bother to verify and simply told Jeffrey to take him back home to rest. Glenda protested, asking why they didn't confirm the boy's age. It was clear he was younger than 19. For safety, the police escorted Jeffrey and Conorak back to the apartment. As soon as they entered, the officers noticed a foul odor in the air. Jeffrey repeated his usual excuse, that his fridge had broken and the meat inside had spoiled. To ease their suspicion, he showed them the photos he had taken earlier, saying it was just a personal hobby between him and his partner. Disgusted by the smell and not wanting to stay in the apartment any longer, the officers made a brief report and left. They never realized that if they had checked the next room, they would have found another body lying there. As soon as the police car drove away, Glenda heard music coming from Jeffrey's room again, along with the sound of a saw. The stench from Jeffrey's apartment became unbearable, and Glenda filed complaint after complaint, but no one believed her. Her daughter was so frightened that she moved in with her boyfriend just to get away from the smell. Even with the windows open and fans running all day, Glenda couldn't bear it. She repeatedly went to the building manager in tears, begging for help. Eventually, the manager sent Jeffrey an eviction notice, ordering him to move out within 30 days. In an attempt to calm things down, Jeffrey showed up at Glenda's door with a gift. It was a sandwich stuffed with shredded meat. Glenda refused to eat anything from him. His apartment reeked of decay, and that smell had been poisoning her entire home. She told him directly that she wouldn't forgive him and wouldn't eat the sandwich, but Jeffrey refused to back down. As anger and dark thoughts began to rise inside him,
Eat the sandwich, I made it for you. See if you like it.
I'll eat it later. Get out of my apartment.
Eat it.
Get out of my house.
a noise came from inside Glenda's apartment. Realizing there were other people in Glenda's apartment, Jeffrey had no choice but to get up and leave. That same night, Glenda heard screaming and the whir of a saw through the air vent again. She called the police in a panic, but they told her to check for herself first. Because she had called so many times before, the police had grown impatient, dismissing her as a nuisance who was wasting their time.
Resource, okay?
I am saying somebody is being killed. Do you get that?
Time jumped to the present as Lionel visited his son in prison. He still believed Jeffrey could be saved, asking him when those dark thoughts had first begun. But when Jeffrey said it started back when he taught him how to make animal specimens, Lionel completely broke down.
You're not gonna lay this on me. No. It's not my fault. I didn't do this. I was a good dad to you.
I know.
Well, what I was doing was I was showing concern for my son who finally showed an interest in something.
Okay, Dad.
You know, I mean, what you did, I didn't teach you how to do that.
No.
You hear me?
Okay.
I didn't do this.
After returning home, Lionel vented his frustration to his wife, insisting that Jeffrey's condition was caused by the hormone pills his ex-wife had taken during pregnancy. He also brought up how she had once abandoned their son for 3 months. Finally, Lionel revealed a secret he had never dared to admit. As a child, he too had dark thoughts, even bringing a homemade bomb to school and throwing it out the window. He once fantasized about hypnotizing a girl from his neighborhood to do something terrible to her. He even imagined killing someone while sitting in church. Sherry could only comfort Lionel, saying maybe things weren't as hopeless as they seemed. After all, they still had another son, one who was kind and lived a stable life. After the case of Jeffrey, the cannibal, was made public, his grandmother's house became a media hotspot. Reporters crowded outside, surrounding the house completely. By then, his grandmother had already developed dementia. Facing a yard full of strangers, she looked completely bewildered and kept calling her grandson's name toward the staircase, asking Jeffrey to come downstairs. Television and newspapers were filled with stories about the cannibal Jeffrey Dahmer. The last surviving victim, Tracy, even appeared on a television program, recalling how Jeffrey had planned to eat his heart. Soon, anonymous sources began spreading rumors through the media, claiming that Jeffrey's stepmother had often beaten and scolded him. Others went further, accusing his father of having abused him when he was a child. These accusations infuriated Lionel, and he went to the prison with his lawyer to meet Jeffrey. By that time, Jeffrey had already appeared on the covers of major magazines. Because their state didn't have the death penalty, Jeffrey, despite his horrific crimes, could only receive life imprisonment. Lionel brought up the infamous serial killer Ed Gein from years ago, a madman whose house had been found filled with human remains, lampshades, and chairs made of skin. He had murdered many people, but was declared insane and never served time in prison. Instead, he lived out his life comfortably in a psychiatric hospital. The lawyer suggested that Jeffrey take the same route, pleading insanity to avoid punishment.
As a comic book, I read about him, I think. I remember the cover, I think.
Lionel believed it was those wicked comic books that had ruined his son. The lawyer told him that if they wanted Jeffrey to avoid a life sentence, they had to insist that he had been mentally ill when committing the crimes. But during the first trial, after long deliberation, the jury concluded that Jeffrey had been fully aware of his actions and was legally responsible for all of them. Jeffrey calmly admitted to 15 counts of first-degree murder. The judge firmly told the victims' families that this verdict guaranteed Jeffrey would spend the rest of his life in prison with no chance of release. After the hearing, Lionel and Joyce once again argued bitterly in public, each blaming the other for turning their son into a monster. Ironically, after leaving Lionel, Joyce's life eventually became calm again. She even tried to visit some of the victims' families, apologizing and asking for forgiveness. One mother replied softly, saying she understood Joyce's pain as a parent, but could never forgive the man who took her child's life. When the hearing reached the victim impact statements, one by one the families came forward to speak. Tears and fury filled the courtroom as they described the pain and devastation Jeffrey had brought to their homes. Among them was the sister of Errol Lindsay, the same woman Jeffrey had once called on the phone. Before the final sentence was announced, Jeffrey was allowed to make a statement of his own. He lowered his head and read word by word from the paper his lawyer had prepared, his voice flat and emotionless. The so-called confession was filled with words of regret and apology, but coming from his mouth, they sounded hollow and mechanical, nothing more than a formality. The courtroom fell silent. Everyone knew that no amount of remorse could ever bring back the lives that were lost or heal the families that had been shattered. Before Jeffrey was taken away to prison, Lionel was granted one last moment to say goodbye. At that moment, his expression was heavy and conflicted, as if years of buried pain had finally been torn open. He looked at his son's emotionless face and admitted that he bore an inescapable responsibility for what Jeffrey had become. He confessed that he had never given his son the support he needed when it mattered most. The last time Jeffrey had been in prison, Lionel wrote a letter to the judge, but that was all he had done. However, at this point, what was the use of talking about making amends? Some mistakes in life simply can't be undone, especially those born from emotional neglect. Jeffrey's mother, Joyce, also fell into deep despair. Unable to bear the public outrage and moral condemnation, she left a note and tried to take her own life by turning on the gas at home. Fortunately, she was found and rescued in time. Lionel later decided to publish a book about his son's life, hoping to record everything in writing. When he heard that his ex-wife had attempted suicide, he looked momentarily surprised, but his face quickly returned to calm. He simply said, "I'll give her a call," then went back to his writing. Inside the prison, Jeffrey showed no real remorse. His infamy had spread across the nation, and disturbingly, he had gained a strange sort of following. Fans from all over sent him letters expressing admiration and even sending him money. One high school girl wrote that 3 classmates had dressed up as Jeffrey for Halloween. She enclosed a comic book and some cash with the letter, hoping Jeffrey would send her an autograph in return. Facing this wave of obsessive admiration, Jeffrey felt a sense of satisfaction he hadn't experienced in years. He even began replying to fan letters, enjoying the feeling of being adored. As the money transfers increased, he started bribing prison guards, using the money to obtain a Walkman and a tape of whale sounds. The sound eerily resembled the moans of a person taking their last breath. He often fell asleep to those haunting noises, while his cellmates complained endlessly. Outside the prison walls, the victims' families were trapped in a never-ending nightmare. Jeffrey's so-called fans harassed them constantly, and even created twisted comic books with Jeffrey as the main character, asking the victims' families to sign copies. The families tried to sue the publishers, but nothing came of it. Meanwhile, Lionel's book became an unexpected hit. The publisher made a fortune, and even film directors reached out to buy the adaptation rights. As Jeffrey's name spread further, copycat killers began to emerge. The families of the victims, who had already lost their loved ones, not only found no peace, but were plunged again into endless fear. Jeffrey, on the other hand, lived comfortably in prison, eating well, sleeping soundly, and even participating in recreational activities. He started attending the prison chapel, singing hymns and joining worship sessions with other inmates. During one incident, he was attacked and seriously injured, but he survived after being rescued in time. When he woke up, lying on the soft hospital bed, he flipped through letters and Christmas cards from fans, a faint smile appearing on his face. The constant media attention made the name Jeffrey Dahmer known in every household. And through a strange, morbid fascination, he began to shift from a symbol of horror into a kind of twisted legend. In 1977, another notorious serial killer named John Wayne Gacy emerged in Chicago. He lured young men to his home under the guise of offering them jobs, drugged them, and then strangled them with a belt. Because he often dressed as a clown for community events, he became known as the Killer Clown. Years later, the local court announced that his execution date would be May 10th, 1994. That same day, Jeffrey Dahmer was to be baptized in prison. It all began when Jeffrey saw Gacy's televised interview. Gacy claimed that for the past 10 years he had devoted himself to the church and prison, praying and repenting, saying he had finally made peace with himself. Those words struck something deep inside Jeffrey. He began to wonder if true faith in God could bring forgiveness for even the darkest sins. So he sought out the prison chaplain for guidance. The chaplain told him a story about Jesus, that no matter how deep one's sins ran, if they repented sincerely and believed in God, their soul could be redeemed. Inspired by those words, Jeffrey decided to be baptized. The church quickly recognized the publicity value of the event. The idea of a cannibal finding God would be the most powerful sermon imaginable. Both sides agreed immediately, and the date was set. And so, an eerily ironic scene unfolded. On the same day, but in different places, one murderer awaited execution by lethal injection, while another was declared reborn in holy water. One was punished by law, the other forgiven by faith. Yet both had taken the lives of the innocent.
You're saved.
With their own hands. After being baptized, Jeffrey seemed to genuinely change. The cold, detached expression on his face was gone, replaced by something almost peaceful. But some things, perhaps God can forgive, while humans never will. In the same prison, there was a former gang leader who had also found faith and vowed to start anew, yet he could never accept Jeffrey's existence. At first, Christopher was wary of Jeffrey, but when he learned about the horrific crimes Jeffrey had committed in the past, his faith completely collapsed. To him, if even a monster like Jeffrey could receive God's forgiveness, then what meaning was left in justice? What meaning was left in repentance and redemption? One day, Christopher found a chance to be alone with Jeffrey while they cleaned the prison bathroom. He grabbed a metal bar and struck Jeffrey with all his strength. The attack went on for several minutes. Jeffrey didn't fight back, as if he had already accepted that this was the end he deserved. In his final moments, the faces of those he had killed flashed through his mind. When the news broke, Lionel rushed to the prison immediately. Seeing his son's body covered in wounds inside the morgue, he broke down completely and cried uncontrollably. No matter what the world thought of him, Jeffrey was still his son, the same curious boy who once loved studying animals. Not long after, Jeffrey's body was cremated, but before that, his brain was removed. Scientists hoped to study it to uncover the mental origins of serial killers, perhaps to find answers about psychological disorders. Lionel strongly objected, believing his son's death should be the final chapter, not another experiment. But Joyce disagreed. She believed that if studying Jeffrey's brain could help humanity understand the cause, maybe it could prevent another tragedy. Their disagreement led them to court. Lionel insisted that Jeffrey's brain should be cremated along with his body, while Joyce wanted to donate it for research. Eventually, the judge made the final ruling. No study would be allowed. If scientists truly discovered the root of Jeffrey's evil in his brain, it would be disastrous, because that would mean evil and guilt could be blamed on biology, stripping away human responsibility and moral choice. Under the judge's decision, Jeffrey's brain was sent to the furnace. As the flames consumed it, all sins and punishments, repentance, and redemption turned to ashes. The story of Jeffrey Dahmer is far more than a tale of one deranged killer. It is a mirror reflecting society's many failures, a family's lack of communication, parents who failed to recognize and guide their son's growing darkness, a justice system so negligent that police repeatedly ignored warnings or dismissed victims, allowing tragedy to continue, and a culture so sickly fascinated by violence that after his arrest, people turned his crimes into comics, adding pain to the victims' families. The judge's final decision revealed the story's deepest truth. Searching for evil in a single brain is both dangerous and futile. Evil is not born from one bad gene. It is the result of biological tendencies, psychological trauma, family environment, and social neglect woven together. Preventing evil is far more important than punishing it afterward or trying to explain it away. True redemption does not lie in the final confession of a killer's life, but in whether society can learn from tragedy to build a world that recognizes, intervenes, and stops evil before it begins. That's the end of Jeffrey Dahmer's story. See you in the next episode. A pair of handsome brothers from a wealthy family secretly plotted to murder their own parents in order to claim their father's multi-million-dollar inheritance sooner, shocking the entire nation. During the trial, the brothers kept lying again and again. They even fabricated a story that their father had assaulted his own sons, creating an unprecedented deadlock among the jurors. Were these brothers acting out of fear and rebellion, or was it simply the result of greed? Today, let's take a closer look at this highly controversial case. The story begins on August 20th, 1989. In an elite neighborhood of Los Angeles, a wealthy couple was brutally gunned down in what appeared to be a mob-style hit. Their 2 sons lost both parents overnight. At the funeral, the elder brother, Lyle, suddenly burst into laughter while speaking about inheriting the estate. Police investigated for 2 months but failed to identify any suspects, and everything about this case felt deeply unsettling. The brothers continued living in the mansion, but the younger one, Erik, was constantly haunted by nightmares. Out of desperation, he decided to seek help from a psychologist named Oziel. When he arrived, Erik confessed that he had been having suicidal thoughts. However, before recounting what had happened, Erik cautiously looked around, afraid that surveillance devices might expose his secret. Even after Oziel assured him the office was completely safe, Erik still seemed uneasy. To be extra cautious, he suggested they talk while walking. In recent weeks, Erik had been dreaming about returning to the crime scene and shooting himself, the memory playing vividly in his mind like a movie reel.
And I'm standing there, and my mom gets shot in the stomach, and then the leg, because her knee practically exploded, right?
Yeah.
And she keeps getting shot, but she won't die, and my dad's face gets blown off like again and again and again, and his face is just gone, and there's smoke everywhere.
And this is every night, this dream?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oziel listened patiently, then asked what had driven him to such despair. Erik began recalling his father, Jose. Jose was a Cuban immigrant who had risen from nothing, building his empire through smart investments and living out the American dream, becoming nearly as influential as Hollywood moguls. He had even been running for office, with grand ambitions for his sons to become future presidents, and thus imposed strict discipline on them. At this point, Erik began to choke up, finally admitting that he had shot his father. Oziel, seeing his emotional breakdown, led him back inside for a deeper conversation. Then, Oziel encouraged Erik to tell the full truth so that he could free himself from the psychological burden. After making Oziel promise not to record anything, Erik sank into his memories. The entire plan, he revealed, had begun after watching a film called Billionaire Boys Club. The movie told the story of privileged children murdering their wealthy parents. Because the family in the film resembled his own so closely, Erik developed a terrifying idea. He invited his brother Lyle to watch it together. The two immediately found common ground and began plotting their revenge. They decided to strike on a weekend when the housemaid wouldn't be home. Oziel couldn't comprehend why simply watching a movie could lead the brothers to commit such a monstrous act. Erik then recalled the painful moments caused by his father. During a tennis match, after Erik made a mistake, his father stormed down from the stands, scolded him in front of everyone, and angrily threw away his racket. Whenever his grades were poor, his father would smash plates at the dinner table in rage. Erik was told to be perfect, and if he failed, he would face unbearable pressure. That pressure eventually drove him to extremes. Still, Oziel couldn't understand why their innocent mother had to die as well, but Erik insisted that she wasn't innocent at all. She deeply loved her husband, and even after discovering his affair, she chose to endure it, numbing herself with alcohol and substances, often showing signs of suicidal thoughts. To Erik, killing her felt like granting her release from pain. The family conflict only grew worse. Lyle had been expelled from college for plagiarism, and when his father found out, he exploded in fury. Unable to take it anymore, Lyle talked back. Their mother joined in, forbidding him from dating a woman of lower status and ordering him to break up immediately. In a sudden fit of rage, she ripped off Lyle's toupee, destroying his last shred of dignity. That was when Erik learned for the first time that his older brother had already gone bald at a young age. He went to Lyle's room to ask why, confused about how his admired brother had lost his hair so early. It turned out that years of stress and his father's constant oppression had caused it. Worried about the family's public image, their father even had magnets implanted in Lyle's scalp so that the wig would stay in place. After learning the truth, Erik fully sided with his brother. From the moment they conceived the idea to the actual killing, only 1 week had passed. After buying guns with fake IDs, the brothers began to execute their plan. Before taking action, Lyle deliberately arranged to have dinner with his friends in order to create an alibi. Then, the two brothers drove back home. They encouraged each other.
I love you, Erik. I love you.
Walked into the house and opened fire on their parents, who were sitting peacefully watching television. After finishing the murder, the brothers picked up all the shell casings, cleaned themselves up, and left for their dinner appointment. On the way, they buried the weapons. They then went to buy movie tickets, but since they were more than 15 minutes late, they couldn't get tickets for the showtime they wanted, so they reluctantly went to the restaurant where their friends had been waiting. But when they arrived, their friends had already left. To make it look as if they had been there for hours, the brothers chatted loudly with the waiter, emphasizing that they came here every day and usually stayed for 4 hours. When they finally returned home, they called the police. When officers arrived, the brothers put on a stunning performance worthy of an award. They cried uncontrollably and collapsed on the floor, appearing deeply heartbroken by their parents' deaths. When the police questioned them, Lyle immediately tried to steer the investigation toward a gang attack. To preserve the crime scene, the detectives decided to take the 2 grieving sons to the station for statements. After getting into the police car, they quietly discussed who should give their statement first. To prevent Erik from slipping up, Lyle told him to take the lead. Facing a seasoned detective whose eyes seemed to see right through him, Erik didn't even dare to make eye contact. He described what the scene looked like and how he reacted upon finding the bodies. Meanwhile, investigators at the house checked the victim's liver temperature and estimated the time of death to be around 10 p.m. The brothers had called the police nearly 2 hours later, giving the killer plenty of time to flee. Since Lyle had already picked up all the shell casings, the police couldn't even determine the order of the shots. However, they found the crime unusually sloppy for a professional gang hit, as organized criminals rarely used shotguns that were so easy to trace. After the questioning, Erik hugged Lyle tightly, trying to draw strength from his brother. When it was Lyle's turn, he appeared calmer than Erik, but the slight tremble of his little finger betrayed his fear. He kept making up stories, trying to blame everything on the mob. He claimed that if there was no sign of burglary, it must have been revenge, since their father had made many enemies in business and often dealt with shady people. Once the questioning ended, the detectives arranged for them to be driven back home. But soon investigators at the scene made a new discovery. The brothers had insisted that the smell of gunpowder was still thick in the air, yet one of the windows had been shattered. If the murder had occurred 2 hours earlier, the air circulation would have cleared any trace of smoke. Just after the brothers arrived home, they suddenly noticed that the car which had once carried their shotgun was now surrounded by police officers taking photos. Afraid the bag might give them away, they decided to pretend they needed to get their tennis rackets and tried to open the trunk. Suddenly, an officer called them back into the house to confirm whether anything was missing. While Erik answered questions inside, Lyle kept his eyes on the car outside. When he saw the officers relax their guard, he asked to use the bathroom and slipped out. He casually walked to the car, retrieved the shotgun shell packaging, and stuffed it into the tennis bag. As he slung the bag over his shoulder, he noticed the receipt for the tennis racket still sitting in the car. He quickly grabbed it, crumpled it into a ball, and shoved it into his pocket before finally letting out a sigh of relief. Then, Lyle walked back into the house as if nothing had happened. At the memorial service, their lawyer, Peter, brought up the issue of inheritance. Although their father Jose's will had not yet been made public, it was almost certain that the brothers would inherit the estate in some form. But Peter's words triggered deep fear in both of them. That was because Jose had always been extremely stingy with their allowance, and in the past, they had even broken into other wealthy homes just to fund their own lifestyle. When Jose found out, he flew into a rage and nearly kicked them out of the house. As punishment, he had promised that neither of his sons would ever inherit a single penny. They would have to earn their own fortune. So now, the brothers were no longer sure whether their father had changed the will or not. Around that time, the investigation took a new turn. On the night of the murders, a white hatchback had been seen parked in front of the brothers' house, identical to a car spotted outside another murder scene, where a victim had been shot 9 times in a similar fashion. Hearing this, the brothers finally felt relieved. Believing they were in the clear, they began to spend recklessly, afraid they might lose their chance to inherit the fortune. They moved into a luxury 5-star hotel, hired personal assistants, and even used limousines for their daily outings. Their dining habits became outrageously extravagant. Erik tried to warn Lyle to control his spending, but Lyle grabbed him by the neck and shouted that they would never have to live a frugal life again. To prevent their father from changing the will, the brothers decided that they had to destroy it before it could be made public. Encouraged by his brother, Erik began to long for this new, luxurious life. Soon, the 2 brothers started an insane shopping spree. They hired top-level trainers for daily fitness and tennis lessons. Then, they threw wild parties at home, inviting friends and beautiful women to join. Meanwhile, the investigation into the murders had made no progress, and the police were under enormous pressure. The area they managed was home to ultra-rich residents, all terrified for their safety. The The wealthy no longer trusted the police to protect them, so they bought guns and hired professional bodyguards. The media swarmed the police department, criticizing them mercilessly, and reporters surrounded the building day and night. The officers working this case were being ridiculed as the most incompetent in the country. Seeing the brothers' reckless spending, Peter, their lawyer, began to worry. Since the will still hadn't been found, he was concerned about who would pay for their extravagant lifestyle. But the brothers put on another flawless act, pretending to be heartbroken sons, still grieving their parents' deaths. Peter felt too sorry for them to scold them further. After that, the brothers began searching the house for the missing will. Lyle hired someone to try to open their father's safe. Erik asked a friend for help, but because the law required the presence of the estate's designated executor, he had no choice but to guard the safe through the night. When his uncle Brian finally arrived, the friend agreed to help open it. However, as the safe was being opened, Lyle stepped in front of his uncle, insisting on checking the contents first, but Brian refused. Lyle then broke down in tears, accusing their father of having an affair, and begged to see what was inside. Reluctantly, Brian gave in. Lyle opened the safe nervously, then told his uncle that there was no will inside. After that, the brothers stopped caring about finding it, but the housemaid later discovered Jose's will hidden in a closet. It stated that the inheritance would go to his 2 sons. The family lawyer soon made the will public.
I devise and bequeath to my wife, Mary Louise Menendez, and in the event of her death, all of my assets shall be split evenly between my sons, Joseph Lyle Menendez and Erik Galen Menendez.
The brothers finally felt a huge weight lifted off their shoulders. They then began spending even more wildly. 2 months later, Erik started to break down, so he went to see the psychologist Oziel to confess. He fell into deep sorrow, saying that ever since the murders, he hadn't been able to sleep, and only in dreams where he shot himself did he feel any relief. He sobbed uncontrollably in front of Oziel, like a child. Seeing this, Oziel suggested bringing Lyle in, believing it might help Erik recover. With Erik's consent, Oziel immediately called Lyle to come over. Before their meeting, Oziel secretly contacted his lover, Judalon, asking her to come as a witness, just in case the 2 killers turned violent. When Lyle arrived, Judalon was already there. He greeted her briefly, then stormed into the office, yelling at Erik. He accused his brother of making up lies in front of the psychologist. Lyle said that if Erik felt troubled, he should have come to him instead of talking to a stranger. When Oziel promised that everything said in the room would remain confidential, Lyle finally calmed down. Then Oziel began guiding the brothers to tell the truth. He said that if a witness ever exposed their crime, he would testify that the brothers had acted out of fear of their father's controlling behavior. After all, there are different types of homicide: planned, accidental, and those driven by psychological trauma. If it was a premeditated act caused by long-term abuse, the punishment might be less severe. Oziel explained that he needed the truth to understand whether the brothers showed signs of antisocial personality. Hearing this, Lyle grabbed Erik and walked out, having no intention of confessing. Once in the car, Lyle expressed a desire to kill Oziel, but since others were around, he didn't act immediately. He planned to get rid of Oziel, but Erik couldn't bring himself to do it. To appease his brother, Lyle finally promised to abandon the idea of killing Oziel. Meanwhile, Oziel, fearing for his safety, locked all evidence of their confessions in his safe. He then handed the key to Judalon, instructing her to give it to his lawyer if anything ever happened to him. Because of patient confidentiality laws, Oziel couldn't immediately report them to the authorities. Still, he began upgrading his home security system out of fear. He promised Judalon that once the house was finished, he would divorce his wife and bring her home, which finally put her at ease. At the same time, the police, under heavy pressure, continued to focus on the theory of a gang invasion. But every hypothesis they proposed eventually fell apart under closer scrutiny. Suddenly, Erik's friend Craig called the police station and provided a brand new lead. Erik had once confessed to Craig that he and his brother had personally killed their parents. They had even written a script inspired by the movie Billionaire Boys Club, and the scenes were almost identical to how Erik's parents were murdered. The police immediately launched a deeper investigation. Accompanied by Lyle, Erik returned to see the psychologist once again. Under his brother's guidance, Erik claimed that the shooting was only a fantasy. Oziel quickly interrupted their lies. He told them that he had placed the therapy records in a safe, and if anything happened to him, the evidence of their crime would be made public. Lyle became furious on the spot. Oziel calmly reassured him, promising that as long as his life wasn't in danger, those records would remain protected under doctor-patient confidentiality. At the request of the police, Craig wore a hidden recorder and invited Erik out for dinner. During their conversation, Craig gradually steered the topic from scriptwriting to the murder of Erik's parents. He desperately wanted Erik to admit the truth, but his eagerness made Erik suspicious. Erik firmly denied everything and questioned Craig until he was left speechless. With that, the police lost their best lead. Meanwhile, Judalon, pretending to be a guest, had moved into Oziel's house and began scheming. She started manipulating Oziel's daughter, hoping to replace his wife. When Oziel discovered her manipulative behavior, he was furious and kicked her out of the house. Enraged, Judalon decided to take revenge. She went straight to the police station and spoke with Detective Zoller about the Menendez case. By the time Oziel returned home, the police were already there with a warrant, confiscating his safe and the incriminating tapes inside. The recordings of the brothers' confession were now out in the open. The cold and chilling words of the Menendez brothers made even the officers around turn pale. Just as Lyle was about to go out with his friends, the police arrived and arrested him. Meanwhile, Erik was in Israel participating in a tennis tournament when he received the shocking news. Panicking, he reached out to friends for help, but his friend, at a loss for what to do, simply advised him to run. Lyle was locked up in solitary confinement, a place far worse than anything he had ever imagined. In the end, Erik decided to return to the United States so he could face the consequences alongside his brother. The police arrested him the moment he landed at the airport. In prison, the brothers were placed in separate cells with only one wall between them. They ate together, but the food was hard to swallow, so they could only drink milk to fill their stomachs. To keep the milk cold, he placed the small milk cartons in the toilet bowl. Lyle, on the other hand, was often bullied in the showers because of his baldness. He tried asking the guards for hair gel to keep up his appearance, but they ignored him completely. The brothers repeatedly tried to seek help from the outside world, but most people rejected them with disgust. They often begged other inmates for spare coins just to make phone calls. Eventually, they met attorney Shapiro. During their discussions, the brothers even asked for tanning lotion and hair gel. They were worried that the media coverage of their trial would ruin their image. But Shapiro's words quickly brought them back to reality. Hearing him out, Erik suddenly decided it was time to tell the truth about what had really happened before the murders. Lyle disagreed, pulling Erik aside and warning him never to bring it up again. At that point, even Shapiro began to lose faith in them, believing the brothers were beyond redemption. The family elders soon dismissed him from the case. When guards later found a written escape plan in Lyle's cell, the brothers were immediately separated. Lyle was transferred to another prison, leaving Erik alone and helpless. He began to rely on the small acts of kindness from certain inmates. At that moment, Erik was fortunate enough to meet Leslie, a woman known as the embodiment of loopholes in the legal system. She often represented serious offenders, especially young men. Leslie had previously defended a boy who had killed his abusive father and firmly believed he had acted in self-defense.
And you could do that for Lyle and Erik.
To be clear, I'd only be defending Erik. Lyle still needs to retain his own separate counsel, but based on the documents I've read so far, these boys do not deserve to spend the rest of their lives in prison, let alone face the death penalty. Now, I can't guarantee you an outcome, but I promise you, I will put up one hell of a fight.
After being contacted by the brothers' uncle, Leslie agreed to take on Erik's case. Seeing how the brothers had spent their inheritance so recklessly after the murders, Leslie believed it was a psychological response to trauma rather than greed. She was determined to uncover the emotional truth behind their actions. After convincing Erik, she arranged for a new psychologist to help him open up. Once trust was rebuilt, Erik finally confessed the dark secret he had been carrying for years. He revealed that, as a child, he had been assaulted by his own brother, Lyle. Even more horrifying, Lyle himself had been abused by their father, Jose. Erik vividly remembered the day it began. It was the same day his father stopped targeting Lyle and turned to him instead. Hearing this, Leslie was heartbroken by his pain and trauma. This devastating truth strengthened her resolve to fight for Erik's defense. This was a father whose career was a success story, a man who demanded his sons become the best in every field. If his children failed to rank first in an exam, what followed was always a hard slap across the face. He even went as far as writing essays for his son to cheat, just so he could get into the best schools. Even the girls his sons dated had to pass his approval. If a girl came from an ordinary family, he and his wife believed she might bring problems. So when such girls visited, the couple refused to open the door and drove them away immediately. One time, Lyle read aloud an essay written by his father in front of the whole family. His mother praised him without hesitation, while his father took the opportunity to give him what he called a life lesson.
Lie, steal, cheat, but win.
Deeply influenced by Jose, Lyle later cheated on a psychology project just to get a perfect grade. When the teacher discovered the truth, the school decided to expel him. When Jose arrived at the school, he immediately denied the whole incident. Claiming he had donated a large amount of money to the school, he pressured the principal to withdraw the punishment. In the end, the principal compromised and reduced the penalty to a 1-year suspension. To cover up the scandal, Jose made Lyle work under him for a year. At that time, Jose had just secured a high-paying position, so he moved the entire family to California. But under his father's shadow, Lyle's pressure to compete only grew heavier. When Jose noticed Lyle's early signs of balding, he dragged him to a wig shop to get a custom-made piece. Any hint of rebellion in Lyle's heart was crushed by his father's domineering attitude. Although the Menendez family was wealthy, Jose was extremely stingy with his children. Because they were short on money, the brothers actually broke into a neighbor's house to steal. But since it was their first time committing theft and they had no experience, the police quickly helped the neighbor recover the stolen items. Their behavior brought great shame to Jose. He quickly launched damage control, persuading the neighbors to drop the charges. That was the kind of father Lyle described. Leslie couldn't understand why Lyle never dared to speak openly about his father's abuse. Determined to uncover the truth, she asked him directly about what had happened. Realizing there was no point in hiding anymore, Lyle began recounting the abuse he had endured. He remembered it clearly. It started when he was 6 years old, right after a tennis match, when his father used massage as an excuse to cross the line. At the time, Lyle didn't understand what his father's behavior truly meant. His mother seemed unaware of everything, or perhaps she chose to turn a blind eye and became a silent accomplice. At the age of 7, under his father's orders, Lyle was made to watch adult films. As he grew older, his father's acts became more varied and invasive, until the abuse became complete. Whenever Lyle tried to resist out of pain, the punishment only became more cruel. Over time, Lyle's mind became twisted, and he began turning his anger toward his innocent younger brother, Erik. One day, the abuse from their father toward Lyle suddenly stopped. Much later, Lyle realized the horrifying reason. Jose had turned his attention to Erik. When Lyle learned this from his brother, he was overwhelmed with guilt and pain. As an adult, he finally found the courage to confront his father and demand that he stop. Jose outwardly agreed without hesitation, but Lyle knew deep down that he was secretly planning to eliminate both of them. After her talk with Lyle, Leslie soon found herself battling sensationalized media reports. Journalists exaggerated every detail of the Menendez brothers' crime, stirring up a public storm that severely damaged their image. The chaos left Leslie exhausted and frustrated, but the brothers' pitiful situation deeply moved Leslie, so she decided to dig deeper into the truth. She sought out Lyle's friend, Donovan. Donovan was willing to talk but refused to testify in court for personal reasons. He recalled how Lyle often described his father's authoritarian nature. To him, Jose was even more frightening than his own father. Through Donovan, Leslie uncovered something Lyle had never mentioned before. After discovering his father's extramarital affair, Lyle had once expressed a desire to kill him. Later, while drinking with Donovan, he even talked about entrusting Erik and their mother to his friend's care if something happened. During one of their honest conversations, Lyle suddenly asked Donovan if he had ever kept any secrets from him. Afraid that lying would end their friendship, Donovan admitted that he himself had once been assaulted. Hearing that, Lyle didn't hesitate to share his own truth, that both he and Erik had suffered the same fate, and their abuser was their father. That conversation took place 4 months before the murders. Lyle had a persistent feeling that his father would soon make a move against him. One night, Jose confronted Erik, accusing him of revealing family secrets to Lyle. Panicked, Erik ran downstairs only to be stopped by their mother. She admitted that she had known everything all along. She said that in order to keep the family together, she had chosen to remain silent, even tolerating her husband's affairs. At that moment, Erik finally understood. His mother's confession meant that she, too, was ready to take action. Their mother was a firearm enthusiast, someone who loved buying hunting rifles to shoot birds. Once, when she took Erik to a gun store, she openly admitted that she wanted to buy a gun to kill someone. Erik initially thought his mother wanted to kill his father's mistress, but he accidentally discovered she had bought a gun that could fit in her bag. From that day on, the brothers began to stay alert. Soon after, the family planned a fishing trip, but their mother suddenly told the brothers it would be delayed until the afternoon. The sudden change of schedule made both of them uneasy. When they finally set out, they noticed the glint of a metal tube inside their mother's bag. Kitty realized her sons were staring at the bag, so she nervously pulled it close to her chest. During the boat ride, the brothers kept watching her every move, full of suspicion. It wasn't until the trip ended that they discovered the bag only contained lipstick. Although it was a false alarm, the brothers made up their minds. They would never again give their parents the chance to hurt them. They started practicing their shooting skills, preparing themselves for the day they might have to strike back. Leslie learned from Erik that Jose often hit and scolded him, but only spoke words of affection when he was violating him. As a child who had long been ignored, Erik mistook this twisted act for love. He never realized that what he felt was distorted affection. Because of his gentle personality, his parents often mocked him as weak and unmanly. To toughen him up, they even locked him inside a closet, but it only made him more timid. When Erik was 6 years old, one of those so-called massages from his father turned into something far darker, and for the first time, he thought he was being loved. To Leslie, Erik was the true victim. Although Lyle had suffered as well, he had passed his pain on to his innocent younger brother. Leslie felt deep sympathy for Erik and often tried to comfort him in any way she could. She even thought that Erik's father had brought his own end upon himself, and that their mother, who knew everything, was equally guilty. Erik wanted to defend his mother's innocence, but the more he explained, the more Leslie believed Kitty shared the blame. After learning what Jose had done to Erik, Kitty began seeing her own son as a rival rather than a victim. She would even examine Erik's body to make sure he hadn't caught any illness. Leslie was appalled, and when she pressed Erik further, he admitted that growing up in such a twisted household had left him confused about his own identity. He said that he had once dated boys his age. After Kitty found out, she began inspecting his body regularly, starting when he was just 16. In such an environment, Erik no longer knew who he truly was. But were Erik's parents really as cruel as he described? Jose was a Cuban immigrant who fell in love with an American woman named Kitty in college. Despite their family's strong opposition, they insisted on being together. After marriage, Jose promised Kitty that he would give her the best life possible. By middle age, Kitty was surrounded by wealth, yet her broken home left her emotionally shattered. She told her therapist that she hated her two sons. In her eyes, the boys were like parasites feeding on their parents' bones, slowly consuming her from the inside out. She believed that one day they would completely devour her. Her elder son, Lyle, was lazy and refused to earn money on his own, throwing tantrums whenever he didn't get pocket money. Her younger son, Erik, failed at everything and often lost his temper on the tennis court. Jose, unable to bear the chaos at home, sought comfort in his mistress. Kitty believed it was her sons and the mistress who had stolen her husband's love. Desperate to win back his attention, she underwent cosmetic surgery to tighten her face. Although the results were impressive, her efforts were meaningless to a man who no longer cared. Jose ignored the youthful face she had fought to regain and mocked her for gaining weight. Kitty's confidence crumbled instantly, but soon Jose appeased her by gifting her a luxury car. Their two sons, however, each received only a book. Jose explained that the book had inspired him to rise from a dishwasher to a millionaire, calling it the key to his success. He wanted his sons to absorb its wisdom, even crossing out what he considered nonsense, believing it would help them grow stronger. Yet, to his disappointment, not long after, his sons were caught stealing and taken to the police station. By then, Jose was already a powerful businessman, and the news left him in tears over what he saw as his failure as a father. Determined to provide his children with a better environment, he decided to move the family again. To keep them from going astray, Jose even hired a psychologist to treat both boys. But deep down, he could never understand why he had raised two sons who seemed completely lost. Jose once said that he never wanted to lose his temper with his children, but when his two sons broke into someone else's home to steal, he was overwhelmed with guilt and shame. For the first time, Jose began to question his life, and he came up with what he thought was a perfect solution. He decided to divorce his wife and leave everything behind. Hearing this, Kitty's eyes filled with tears. Neglected by her husband and estranged from her sons, she had already developed severe psychological issues. If Jose truly went through with the divorce at that point, it would have completely destroyed her. So, he reluctantly gave up the idea. To relieve his frustration, Jose hired a male companion during a business trip. Meanwhile, the relationship between the Menendez brothers and their mother grew increasingly strained. One evening during dinner, after she sprinkled cinnamon on their food, the brothers accused her of poisoning them. Furious and humiliated, Kitty suffered a seizure right at the table, collapsing to the floor as her sons stood there coldly, watching without offering help. Even when she finally got back up, neither of them moved. The incident left Kitty emotionally shattered. When Jose returned from his trip, he told her he had ended his affair and promised to rebuild their family. For the first time in a long while, Kitty saw a glimmer of hope. Jose quickly began taking action to repair their image. Early one morning, he woke his sons and brought them to the neighbors whose home they had robbed, forcing them to apologize in person. After securing their forgiveness, he decided the brothers should perform community service, picking up trash to atone for what they had done. He encouraged them to rely on themselves from now on, but Jose never truly let go of control. He had already set his sights on running for office in Florida and appointed his assistant as his right-hand man. He jokingly compared himself to Kennedy and even began planning political futures for both of his sons. But deep down, he knew they weren't dependable, so he put his faith only in himself. Around that time, Jose learned that Lyle had been caught cheating in school. Enraged, he took his son to the family cemetery and showed him the graves of other men sharing their last name, demanding to know if Lyle thought he was worthy of it. Lyle pushed back, asking why his father was always so harsh. Jose dismissed the question. In his mind, everything he did was for his son's own good. After all, his own father had treated him the same way. Jose believed that his punishment hadn't been strict enough, which was why his sons had become so weak. He decided to take a gentler approach with Erik, the younger one. One day, while applying ointment to Erik's foot,
"Well, I remember when you were a baby. The only thing that would make you sleep was rubbing your feet, actually.
It stings a little.
It's supposed to sting. That means it's working, right?"
He sensed his son's resistance, so he dropped the pretense and began asking Erik about his sexual orientation.
I'm genuinely asking because I don't see you with a single piece of pussy ever.
What are you? This is unbelievable. I don't have to listen to this.
Sit down. I'm giving you a future with me. When I am a senator, you're going to work with me in politics. And for that future, you need a girlfriend. Janice Szymanski.
No, Dad, no.
Already talked to her parents. She's beautiful. She looks like Miss America. Come on.
No. I'm not living here. I'm going to stay in the dorm.
Erik didn't deny it, so Jose angrily dragged him into the house and gave him a harsh lesson. Kitty heard the commotion but chose not to intervene. That night, Jose was counting the protective supplies at home, only to discover that not a single one had been used. That discovery chilled him to the core. It confirmed to him that his son not only preferred men, but was being careless about his safety. Jose immediately told Kitty, worried that Erik might get sick. After hearing this, Kitty began conducting regular health checks on Erik herself. When she confirmed that he was fine, she told Jose he was overreacting, though deep inside she began to suspect there was something more behind his concern. She asked Jose a shocking question. Jose denied it, insisting that all he ever wanted was to raise strong, confident boys. Hearing that, Kitty let down her guard, but the truth was, Jose had been hiding his own trauma. He had been violated by a family member as a child, and even his own mother had suffered similar abuse. It was a wound that had haunted him his entire life. Eventually, Jose decided to draft his will. When he invited the lawyer to their home, Lyle happened to witness it. Not long after, the brothers' extravagant spending began to drive Kitty crazy. They were no longer satisfied with modest cars like their Ford Escort. Even during arguments, Jose would sometimes laugh at their spoiled behavior. He believed he was finally learning to let go and forgive, ready to move past his own pain and start anew. What Jose never expected was that his two sons would take up their guns and walk toward them. As a result, Jose and Kitty, completely unprepared, were shot and killed by their own sons. Lyle's girlfriend, Jamie, came to visit him, and he tried to persuade her to lie in court so he could be released sooner. But Jamie firmly refused and broke up with him on the spot. Lyle then tried to convince his friends and relatives to back him up with the same lie, yet every attempt failed. Still, he didn't seem the least bit worried. Because of his good looks, Lyle had gained a group of admirers who saw him on television. Every day in prison, he received piles of fan letters from infatuated women. More and more people began to judge the case not by facts but by his appearance, insisting that someone like him must have had his reasons. Some even ignored all evidence, claiming that Lyle was completely innocent. When meeting with his defense lawyer, Jill, Lyle continued spinning strange lies. Leslie, who was observing the meeting, felt uncomfortable and interrupted him. Afterward, she discussed her thoughts on the Menendez brothers with Jill. Hearing Jill's opinion, Leslie's expression changed, but she quickly laughed it off and shifted the subject. Both lawyers, perhaps without realizing it, were beginning to sympathize with the brothers they defended. When bored, Lyle would sort through his fan mail, pick out numbers, and call women from the prison phone just to pass the time. Erik, on the other hand, was trapped in waves of emotion, clearly hiding something that still haunted him. As the brothers prepared for trial, Jill and Leslie began coaching them. Following his attorney's instructions, Lyle described the night of the murder, claiming that he and Erik believed their father planned to kill them and tried to escape in the middle of the night, but their father ordered them back to their rooms. Sensing his wife's agitation, Jose had gone back to the bedroom with her. The brothers claimed they thought their parents were getting guns, so they grabbed their own shotguns from the trunk and opened fire out of panic. Leslie immediately realized the story was fake and scolded Lyle for making it up. Then she walked up to Lyle and told him to portray his mother as an accomplice who had helped their abusive father. Lyle didn't hesitate. Drawing on his talent for acting, he teared up within seconds, sobbing uncontrollably. Leslie, moved by his display, encouraged him to perform the same way in court. After all, an emotional jury with no legal background would be far easier to persuade. When Leslie took the stand, she argued that the Menendez brothers had been victims of long-term abuse and that the killings were acts of self-defense. Her statement shifted public opinion, making people more sympathetic toward the brothers and their possible leniency. Soon, several witnesses testified that Jose had been extremely strict with his sons, though none could confirm that either brother had been physically violated. But was Leslie's defense truly motivated by justice? She had once defended a man who had brutally killed his girlfriend, managing to reduce his murder charge to manslaughter. He served only 3 years in prison and was released to live a normal life as a chef, while the victim's life ended forever. The victim's father, Dominic, had never stopped following Leslie's new cases. He often gathered members of the press to discuss how the Menendez brothers had murdered their parents. When the second trial began, Lyle sat at the defense table and admitted to shooting his parents, but claimed it was out of fear. He then gave a heartbreaking testimony, describing years of abuse from his father. People in the courtroom were visibly moved. When he spoke about his mother, Lyle added even more details, accusing her of turning a blind eye to everything his father had done. Then he revealed how his trauma led him to lash out at Erik in his own moments of confusion and pain. Hearing this, Erik broke down in tears beside him. Even Dominic, sitting in the gallery, struggled to keep seeing the brothers purely as monsters. But one person remained unmoved, Pam, the prosecutor, who was convinced that every word they said was a lie. Late at night, Lyle called his admirer, Norma, boasting proudly about everything he had accomplished and even suggesting that his story should be made into a movie, unaware that Norma was secretly recording the entire conversation. After this incident, Dominic proactively approached Leslie to reconcile. Meanwhile, after being abandoned by Oziel, Judilon flew into a rage and exposed Oziel's scandal in court, completely destroying his reputation. By then, Oziel had already lost his professional license, and any therapy sessions he continued to offer were technically illegal. As a result, the brothers' original confession, obtained through him, began to lose credibility. The situation was slowly turning in the Menendez brothers' favor. Next came Erik's turn at the defense table, but he seemed troubled and distracted. As he began to speak, his distance from the microphone caused his words to be interrupted several times, making him increasingly nervous. Following the plan, he began tearfully describing the abuse he claimed to have suffered from his father. Suddenly, the prosecutor, Pam, interrupted and questioned the truth of his story. She cleverly set a trap with a single question.
And did you truly go to the Santa Monica Big Five on the morning of August 18th to buy handguns?
Yes, without a doubt I did.
And you and Lyle looked in the case, and then you were told you couldn't leave the store with the handguns because there was a 15-day wait. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Menendez, did you know that Big Five stopped carrying handguns in 1986? Mr. Menendez, you have lied in the past, but you're not lying now?
No.
Asking about the gun Erik mentioned in his testimony. However, the store he named had stopped selling handguns back in 1986, proving that his statement was false. Erik's disastrous testimony infuriated Lyle, who harshly scolded his younger brother afterward. But Erik snapped back, saying that Lyle was the one who started everything. Lyle was stunned, insisting that it was Erik who first came up with the idea. He reminded him that Erik had been obsessed with Billionaire Boys Club and had even written a script about killing their parents. Lyle argued that if he wanted to, he could have revealed in court that Erik had gone to him for help after their parents discovered his relationship with another man.
Says the guy who blew our dad's head off and shot our mom in the face.
Erik, let's not forget what they did to us, okay?
Once again, Lyle shifted the blame onto Erik. After a long wait, the brothers returned to court for another round of hearings. During that time, Leslie had given birth to a child, but she still handled the defense with full focus and passion. She argued that the Menendez brothers were guilty only of excessive self-defense. From numerous witness statements, she extracted bits of testimony suggesting that the brothers had suffered mistreatment since childhood. Her emotional and powerful arguments deeply moved several jurors. The brothers, encouraged by this reaction, became increasingly confident that they would soon be free. Thanks to Leslie's support, Erik relaxed and began focusing on writing novels. He even started a romantic relationship while still in prison. Meanwhile, the city was struck by frequent earthquakes, and the media frenzy surrounding the case only intensified. When the jury failed to reach a unanimous verdict, the court declared a mistrial. Excited, the brothers immediately asked their lawyers if that meant they were free. But 6 months later, the case was retried. This time, many of the female jurors saw Erik as a pitiful young man, some even calling the prison to comfort him. Still, Erik grew increasingly discouraged as he sensed public opinion shifting against them. Recently, he had begun receiving hateful letters from strangers, filled with anger and contempt. Leslie also discovered that many of the male jurors had voted against the brothers not because of the evidence, but because they were prejudiced against her personally. By then, the brothers' inheritance had nearly run out, leaving them unable to pay their legal fees. Lyle's attorney Jill decided to withdraw from the case, but Lyle remained confident, claiming he would soon be able to afford her again. That was when Jill learned that Lyle had been secretly corresponding with Norma, who had written a book based on him. He believed the book would bring in money, but Jill warned him about the risk. If that so-called admirer released the tapes, the prosecution would use them in cross-examination and destroy his credibility. As a result, Lyle lost the right to testify in the second trial. Now, everything depended on Erik. At that moment, Erik felt completely helpless. Now, the once wealthy Menendez brothers had become bankrupt, and people began to kick them while they were down. To avoid another deadlock in court, the judge ruled that Erik could no longer use excessive self-defense as his argument. Leslie tried everything to defend him, even suggesting that Erik abandon Lyle and save himself, since only Lyle had actually pulled the trigger. But that idea struck a nerve with Erik.
Do you know how much people hate you? No, do you know, though? Like, you didn't do a good job.
Feeling hopeless about life, he refused any further help from Leslie. Soon after, Erik gained a new prison neighbor, Simpson. Once a famous football star, Simpson had become the prime suspect in a murder case involving his ex-wife. While the whole world expected him to be found guilty, the court declared him not guilty. In just 1 week, Simpson had walked free, and that gave the Menendez brothers renewed hope. To Lyle, it was unbelievable that a man accused of such a serious crime had said almost nothing during the trial. Yet his defense team still managed to set him free.
Garcetti cares about one thing only, and that is his re-election. That is why they are trying to gut our case, because they need a win, and they need it now.
Even so, Lyle refused to keep Leslie as his court-appointed attorney. He wanted to rehire his private lawyer instead. He explained that he had gathered some donations from public sympathy campaigns and now had money to pay for it. Leslie remembered his manipulative stunt, how he had appealed to the public's emotions to collect funds for himself. What frustrated her even more was learning that Lyle had spent $2,500 of those donations on a new custom-made wig. But Lyle didn't care. He even tried to use his past trauma as a way to stir public compassion, coming up with a slogan to promote himself.
If you've been abused, you cannot be accused.
Erik, who had been sitting silently beside him, suddenly burst into laughter. He realized that the brother he had always admired was, in fact, a fool. When Lyle tried to argue back, he noticed that Erik was holding a book, one published by his admirer, Norma. Worse yet, Norma had released every recording of their private phone calls to the public. Only then did Lyle realize how badly things had spun out of control. He tried to deny responsibility, claiming he had no idea she was recording. Erik was furious. He believed that they had been so close to freedom. But Lyle's arrogance and those recordings had ruined everything. The jury's female members had still been sympathetic toward them, and they only needed to convince one more person to win their release. But Lyle's behavior had now drained all remaining sympathy. Public opinion began turning against them. After a heated argument, Erik finally lost control and attacked his brother for the first time. Leslie had to call the guards to break them apart. When the Menendez brothers returned to court, a new prosecutor, Khan, took control of the case. Using Lyle's letters and recordings, he argued that the brothers had fabricated their stories to gain pity. Leslie tried to object but was cut off by the judge. Then Khan brought in a car salesman to testify about the car Jose had bought for Lyle. Jose had spent $23,000 on an Alfa Romeo sports car for his son, but Lyle had called it a piece of junk and cursed his father for it. The salesman admitted he couldn't help feeling sorry for Jose. Next, Erik's friend Craig took the stand. He confirmed that he and Erik had once written a script together about a boy who kills his wealthy parents to inherit their fortune. He also revealed what Erik had told him after the murders, that he shot his parents while they were asleep using a hunting shotgun from their car. Craig's testimony destroyed the brothers' defense, turning their case from self-defense to cold-blooded murder. He added that the movie Billionaire Boys Club was practically a mirror image of what the brothers had done. Then, Lyle's cousin, who had received letters from him, was called to testify. He admitted that Lyle had asked him to lie in court and claim that Jose had abused them. Finally, it was Erik's turn to defend himself, but Khan gave him no chance to breathe. He immediately asked if Erik had planned to kill his parents with a crossbow. Flustered, Erik accidentally revealed that he had often visited gun shops. Khan then confronted him with his earlier confession about buying shotgun shells, pressing him with more damning questions. In the end, Khan declared that the Menendez brothers hated their parents and had brutally murdered them. He emphasized that this was not self-defense, it was murder. Desperate, Erik brought up the old claim of abuse again. He said his father had forbidden him from ever speaking about it and threatened punishment if he did. Erik claimed that after telling Lyle, he feared their father would kill him. But this only confirmed for the prosecution that Erik had planned the murders long before. Then came testimonies from employees and service workers. They all said they had seen the brothers shouting at their parents in public. It seemed clear that the parents feared their sons, not the other way around. Several witnesses even testified that Jose and Kitty genuinely cared for their children, and that the Menendez home was nothing like the house of horror the brothers had described. Then Khan presented the only medical record that supposedly proved Erik had been abused. The report mentioned a small bruise on his throat, but Khan argued that such marks were common in children. He even gave an example, saying that Erik might have simply choked on a popsicle that slipped and hit his throat. Leslie tried to stand and request a mistrial, but the judge immediately overruled her. Khan then held up a book titled Children Who Kill to expose Leslie's courtroom tactics. He reminded everyone that she had once helped a murderer escape conviction by claiming the defendant was abused, and now she was using the same trick again. Leslie was speechless. Khan completely controlled the courtroom as he accused the Menendez brothers of killing their parents for money. After all, they were lazy and had no intention of ever earning their own living. Jose had been deeply disappointed in his sons and planned to remove them from his will. So, the brothers decided to act first. They coldly eliminated their parents to secure themselves as sole heirs. After the funeral, desperate to find the will, they drove off with the family safe to a friend's place to have it opened. Because they had to wait overnight, Erik even slept beside the safe, clutching it in his arms, showing how obsessed they were with money. When the safe was finally opened, Lyle insisted on checking it alone. Khan theorized that during that time, Lyle might have hidden a new version of the will. Before resolving the inheritance issue, the brothers had already spent money like water. They burned through $700,000 in a short period, apparently afraid their father might change the beneficiaries. All these actions, Khan argued, proved that the Menendez brothers were guilty of premeditated murder. Now, the jury's task was no longer to decide whether they were guilty, but whether to sentence them to life in prison or to death. By this point, the media had lost much of its interest in the case. But after the Simpson trial had shaken public trust in the justice system, people were eager to see a clear example of accountability. So, under public pressure, the Menendez brothers were found guilty of first-degree murder. The case moved into the sentencing phase.
Under California law, the jury is only allowed to consider two sentencing options: life without parole or death.
The jury felt enormous pressure. Some female jurors still pitied the brothers' tragic upbringing, but others believed justice demanded their deaths. One juror even suffered a heart attack in the middle of deliberation. A male alternate juror gently urged the others to show mercy and spare their lives. In the end, the brothers were sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Prosecutor Khan was satisfied with the outcome, knowing the Menendez brothers would never walk free again. Leslie could only accept the result in silence. When she learned that the brothers would be sent to separate prisons, she tried to intervene but failed. Eventually, they were transported to different facilities. Before leaving, they exchanged one last look through the bars of the prison van, realizing they were about to be apart forever. Then the story flashed back to the day before the murders. Jose had promised his wife during that boat trip that he would focus on rebuilding their family. They even discussed his plan to run for office and pave the way for their son's future. But at that same moment, their sons were secretly plotting how to end their parents' lives. When the sentencing ended, the Menendez case finally came to a close. Both brothers remain in prison, serving life sentences without parole. To this day, they continue to stand by their original story. Not long ago, a spokesperson for the Southern California prison confirmed that the Menendez brothers, who killed their parents in 1989, were reunited for the first time in over 20 years. The two embraced tightly and wept uncontrollably. In the mid-20th century America, there was a man whose story became the blueprint for modern horror movies. From Psycho to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and even The Silence of the Lambs, all were inspired by him. This is the third installment of the Monster series, the Ed Gein story. In the 1950s, deep within the desolate countryside of Wisconsin, stood a decaying farmhouse where Ed lived alone with his mother. Ed's only solace each day was after milking the cows at dawn, when he would quietly sneak near his neighbor's house and peer through the dim window cracks to watch the neighbor's daughter. He stared obsessively, his eyes never leaving her, as if drawn by a dark and forbidden desire. But he couldn't control himself, and the old wooden plank beneath his feet gave a sharp creak. The sudden sound startled the girl. Adeline thought it was her mother, but when she opened the door, no one was there. She followed the stairs down, catching a blurry glimpse of Ed's figure fleeing awkwardly into the night. A faint smile slowly curved at the corner of her lips, as if she didn't mind being secretly watched. Ed stumbled back into the farmhouse, his heartbeat still racing. His gaze wandered until it stopped at his mother's drawer. With trembling hands, he pulled out her undergarments and carefully put them on himself. The strange and blasphemous touch made his breathing grow heavy, wrapped in a sense of forbidden pleasure. He then grabbed an old leather belt and began to slowly tighten it around his neck. His breath grew shorter, his body swinging between pain and ecstasy. Just as he lost himself in the twisted sensation, the door suddenly burst open and his mother's figure appeared in the dim doorway.
Take him off.
Ed had always harbored a near-pathological obsession with women, but his strange and piercing voice always made girls feel uneasy whenever he tried to talk to them.
Eddie, you can't do that.
Do what? Talk to a couple of girls? You sound like mother.
One day, he came across a newspaper article about Nazi concentration camps, with the headline reading that 500,000 people had died there. Below it was a photo showing bodies piled high like mountains, and Ed's eyes couldn't look away. He was deeply fascinated by the chilling aura of death that emanated from it. At that moment, Adeline entered the small store in town. Unlike others, she walked straight up to Ed, took his hand, and led him to a corner seat. Her eyes were bright and full of excitement as she whispered to Ed that she had a secret to share with him, a secret only he could know, because in this town, only he was as much of a misfit as she was. Ed opened the wooden box Adeline handed him. Inside was a stack of concentration camp photos, said to have been found by her cousin's boyfriend who worked for the Strategic Intelligence Bureau, in the pocket of a dead Nazi officer. Ed flipped through them one by one, his eyes filled with uncontrollable obsession.
Piles of wood or something. And Alice found this little...
At the bottom of the box was a forbidden comic from New York, depicting female Nazi officers torturing prisoners, bloody and perverse, something almost unheard of in the rural countryside. As Ed turned the pages, the darkest corners of his soul began to awaken. The shock those images brought him surpassed any real-life experience. No one knew that these photos and comics had planted an irreversible seed deep within his spirit, one that would grow into a monster who would one day shock the entire nation. A few days later, Ed was chopping wood in the barn when his brother Henry approached, looking serious. He told Ed he had decided to get married to a woman who had been divorced twice, but their religious mother believed she was evil and forbade it. Yet Henry was determined. He was tired of his mother's suffocating control and accused her of using religion to build her own cage. Henry decided to leave and urged Ed to do the same, to escape their mother's grasp. He even said that it was because of her that Ed had become the monster everyone in town whispered about. Those words pierced Ed's ears like knives. He couldn't bear his brother's blasphemy toward their mother.
You need to get away with her. All right, look.
There she is right there.
Ed froze, his arm trembling slightly, until he noticed the growing pool of blood behind Henry's head. Only then did he jolt awake, panic flooding through him as he pushed the wheelbarrow of firewood and hurried away. But when he glanced back, Henry, who had just been lying in blood, was somehow standing again, as if nothing had happened.
Hey, we'll clear that brush tomorrow, huh? Set some fires before weather gets worse. You're right about Mother. She's a good woman. I'll make it right with her.
Ed returned home with an inexplicable sense of relief and joy, feeling as if everything had finally passed. However, during dinner, Henry never showed up. Their mother coldly assumed he had eloped with that widow. Ed said nothing and kept eating silently. The next day, when he stepped into the barn, he froze. Henry still lay in the same place as before.
Wake up. Mother's asking where you been. I thought I might have been dreaming. I didn't mean to do this.
He dragged his brother's body into a nearby bush, lit a fire, and pretended to burn dry grass. Flames rose high, smoke billowed into the sky. Then Ed stumbled back home, claiming he had found his missing brother. By the time the police arrived, Henry had no pulse. Forensic science was primitive back then, and the coroner concluded that Henry had died from smoke inhalation and injuries after collapsing during the fire. Just like that, Ed's crime was easily covered up. But when he returned home, he found that his mother had suffered a stroke from grief, her condition worsening rapidly. Soon, half her body was paralyzed, leaving her unable to care for herself. Ed gently carried her to bed, choking back tears as he whispered in her ear,
Lord, I love you, Mother. Just you and me now. Now I get to care for you, Mother. Hospital says I need to clean you up.
From that day on, he washed his mother's body every morning with a sponge and fed her water and meals by hand. His mother soon sensed something strange hidden in his eyes, a burning intensity that made her feel uneasy. One day, she forced herself up, leaning on her cane, insisting that Ed take her to the neighboring farm to collect an old debt. When they arrived, the farmer was arguing fiercely with his wife. Upon seeing her at the door demanding repayment, he cursed that he'd rather burn in hell than give her a cent. Overcome with rage, Ed's mother shouted back at him, her voice trembling, and then she suddenly collapsed to the ground, lifeless. Her sudden death shattered Ed completely. After the funeral, he stayed at her grave for hours, curling up on the cold earth like a lost child. With his mother gone, Ed sank into complete isolation. The farmhouse was empty and cold, leaving him the only soul inside. One day, while rummaging through old belongings, he came across his mother's undergarments. The moment his fingers brushed against the fabric, he seemed to hear her familiar whisper echo in his ears. That night, Ed drove to the cemetery, carrying a shovel and a Bible as he walked toward his mother's grave.
Your dead shall live, their bodies shall arise. You who dwell in the dust, wake and sing for joy.
He swung the shovel, layer after layer of soil flying aside, sweat soaking his body, until the dull sound of metal striking wood broke the silence. His eyes lit up, he pried the coffin open, and the stench of decay filled the air, but he didn't care. Instead, he carefully lifted his mother's body into his arms. He placed his mother in the truck and drove back to the farmhouse under the cover of night. When he reached home, he gently carried her to her room and began to clean her body with great care. He dressed her in her old clothes, adjusted her posture, and arranged her neatly on the chair, as if she had never left. The house was filled with the scent of death, yet in Ed's eyes, it carried a twisted sense of warmth and peace.
Are you there, Mother? Just rest.
The bones didn't interest him much because what fascinated him most was the texture of the soft skin. Many people in later generations could never understand why he was so obsessed with removing human skin. In truth, Ed's inspiration came from an old Nazi comic book. It once depicted a scene where human skin was made into a lampshade, presented as a birthday gift to a high-ranking officer. That detail haunted him. He tried to imitate and test it himself, as if doing so would somehow make it make sense. But he soon discovered that human skin was fragile and tore easily. Meanwhile, Adeline had always dreamed of leaving that dead and silent town to chase the bright lights of New York City. She met a crime scene photographer and hoped he could take her along to the big city for a new life. The man often returned from photographing fresh murder scenes, the bodies in his pictures still holding traces of warmth. Adeline wasn't disgusted by them. Instead, her eyes revealed a strange fascination. Ed stared at her in disbelief, convinced they were kindred souls. So he gathered his courage and invited Adeline to visit his home. As he led her toward his mother's room, Adeline's gaze fell upon a strange-looking stool. Ed casually explained that it was an old piece he had recently repaired, but Adeline noticed something odd. A small bump on the cushion, shaped disturbingly like a nipple. He quickly lied, saying it was made from animal hide, just barely brushing off her suspicion. When the door opened, his mother was sitting quietly in the rocking chair, with her back to them. Adeline, not understanding the situation, stepped forward to introduce herself, but of course received no response. Thinking she had been rejected, Adeline felt embarrassed and angry, then stormed out of Ed's house. Her figure faded into the night, leaving Ed restless and confused. He went to the local bar, drowning his sorrow in alcohol. The tavern owner, Mary, saw this and smilingly comforted him, saying she could introduce him to girls. But when Ed learned she was German like his mother, yet had fallen into running a sinful business, his expression turned cold. A feeling of defilement rose within him. He suddenly raised his shotgun and shot Mary dead on the spot. The next morning, Ed was sweeping the floor in his mother's dress, lost in a feverish delusion. Suddenly, a loud knock broke his trance. The visitor introduced himself as the town sheriff. Ed quickly tore off his mother's face mask and threw on a heavy coat to cover the dress beneath. The sheriff asked about Mary's whereabouts, saying witnesses had seen Ed's truck near her bar the night she died. To the townsfolk, Ed was a quiet and harmless man, someone who wouldn't even hurt a fly. He feigned shock and sorrow, guessing that Mary might have angered the wrong person because of her side business. His explanation conveniently matched the direction of the ongoing investigation, causing the sheriff to lower his suspicion for the moment. Still obsessed with Adeline, Ed sought her out again, apologizing for his mother's coldness and promising that next time she would surely treat her kindly. Adeline's anger softened, and the two began to draw closer once more. That night, Ed returned to the cemetery alone and chose a woman's grave. He dug it open and removed a jade ring from the corpse's stiff fingers. The next day, he took Adeline to a fine restaurant. Under the flicker of candlelight, the atmosphere turned romantic. After dinner, Ed mysteriously led her back to the cemetery. There, among the graves, he got down on one knee and proposed.
You know, when you asked me what I wanted out of my life, I think I know now. Will you marry me?
Adeline, overjoyed, said yes without hesitation.
Yes, of course I'll marry you.
Just as they were about to share a kiss, Ed suddenly froze, his face clouded with confusion. He muttered softly that he wasn't ready to be a father yet and didn't know how to take care of a child. Adeline comforted him gently, and the next day she introduced him to a family who needed a babysitter, hoping he could learn what it felt like to care for children in advance. However, Ed's mind worked in ways far different from ordinary people. He drove the two children straight to his house, saying he wanted to perform magic for them. He brought out 3 human skulls and a finger bone, hid the bones under bowls, and told the children to guess where they were.
No. You sure?
The children quickly guessed correctly, but then noticed a broken finger sticking out from one of the bowls. Ed clapped his hands excitedly, declaring that this was his magic trick. The boy thought he was using fake props to fool them. Ed went further, boasting that he could transform into a woman and even remove his own head. The children stared at him in disbelief, but Ed confidently walked into another room.
Okay. I'm turning.
Moments later, he stepped out, holding a severed head on his shoulders.
Of course it's real!
Both children screamed and burst into tears. Ed, however, believed his performance was a success. To him, their tears were proof they had been moved by his magic. When the children returned home, they ran to their parents in terror and told them everything. Ed's reckless act of taking them without permission infuriated the parents. Instead of earning their trust, he was immediately fired, losing his only job as a babysitter. When Ed learned that the family had rehired a woman named Evelyn as their new nanny, his eyes locked on her instantly. Sensing the menace in his stare,
You took my job.
I'm just a babysitter.
That was my job. That's what I mean.
What?
Helping me with my family plans.
Evelyn quickly turned and walked away. That night, while caring for the children, she suddenly heard strange noises coming from the basement. She followed the sound and found an open window, a chill of unease creeping up her spine. As she stood there in confusion, Ed quietly stepped up behind her. The next day, Ed walked into Adeline's house with a firm expression, announcing that he was ready for marriage. Although Adeline's mother strongly opposed it, knowing Ed was a deeply strange man, Adeline ignored her and left home with him without hesitation. After arriving at Ed's house, Adeline began tidying up as a new wife, taking on the duties of the household. Meanwhile, Ed grabbed his shotgun, saying he was going hunting to celebrate. As Adeline took out the trash, she noticed that the light in Ed's mother's room upstairs suddenly flickered on. Driven by curiosity, she went upstairs and opened the door, only to see Ed's mother quietly sitting in her rocking chair. Calling her name, she stepped closer, but when the figure turned around, it was Ed wearing his mother's face as a mask. His surprise sent Adeline running away in horror. He later turned his anger toward Evelyn, blaming her for taking his job and preventing him from affording a wedding. With an icy stare, Ed carried his mother's corpse before Evelyn and placed a heavy iron bucket between them. He declared that anyone who brought shame to the family would face his mother's punishment. Then he forced a hammer into his mother's hand, trying to make her strike Evelyn's head. Ed did not plan to give up. He was determined to master the art of removing skin perfectly. He mixed milk and petroleum jelly into a white liquid and carefully spread it across every inch of Evelyn's body. He believed this was the only way to keep the skin soft and moist, as it should be. Once done, he wrapped her in layers of white gauze soaked in the mixture, covering even her once beautiful face. According to his calculations, after 48 hours of resting, he would have created a flawless, peelable masterpiece. But as Ed immersed himself in his gruesome creation, a sudden scream echoed from upstairs. Adeline came back, hoping to apologize to Ed's mother. When she entered the dim room, she was met with the horrifying sight of a faceless corpse sitting in the rocking chair. Terrified, Adeline screamed again and bolted from the house, ignoring Ed's frantic shouts behind her. She ran home as fast as she could, shouting for her mother, but found only a note on the door saying she had gone to church. Adeline quickly locked the door, rushed upstairs, and peered out the window, only to see Ed approaching.
I know what you are!
But Ed knew her house's layout by heart. He effortlessly opened the basement door and slipped inside. making his way up through the familiar corridors. When he reached her bedroom door, a strange green glow stopped him in his tracks. Adeline sat calmly on the bed, completely different from the panicked woman she had been moments ago. She admitted that this set of green lingerie was a gift prepared for Ed. She said she had long known it was Ed who secretly removed her undergarments and had sensed there was something dark buried deep within his soul. Ed tried to defend himself, saying that truly knowing someone didn't mean having to confess every secret, but Adeline insisted this was his last chance to tell the truth. If he lied again, everything between them would be over.
I saw that dead body, Eddie. Is that your mother's body?
That's not her.
Tell me the truth.
She told me she just needed the bones.
Who did?
Mother.
Ed explained that he had dug up the wrong grave that night, but still saw the corpse as a stand-in for his mother, believing her spirit now lived within it. Adeline told him he was terrifying, yet she couldn't help asking what it felt like the first time he touched flesh. She mentioned a photograph she had once seen from the photographer, a man who had jumped from the Brooklyn Bridge, his face smashed beyond recognition, resembling a jack-o'-lantern from a night of terror, just like Ed's mother's remains. Adeline admitted she never understood why people feared death so deeply. To her, death was nothing more than dust returning to dust, earth returning to earth. Instead, she believed there was a strange and captivating allure hidden within the moment of dying. 48 hours later, Ed carefully cut open the hardened gauze that wrapped Evelyn's body and slowly removed the undergarments from her corpse. Then, Ed put them on himself. Ever since reading an article about transgender people in the newspaper, a thought had taken root deep inside his mind. He despised his male body and believed that only the graceful shape of a woman truly reflected his inner self. One day, Ed went to the town's hardware store to buy lime powder for preservation, claiming a calf had died on his farm. But when he went to pay, he found himself a few cents short. Bernice gently patted his hand and kindly told him it was fine. The amount was enough. Then tears welled up in her eyes as she confessed that Ed had always treated her with respect. He was the only man in town who had ever been kind to her. Hearing that, Ed invited her to have dinner together. Over the meal, Bernice opened up, saying her son was the deputy sheriff of the town. Though she was proud of him, he had distanced himself because of her reputation, refusing to visit her anymore. After her husband died, she fell madly in love with another man, but unfortunately, he was already married. The man eventually abandoned his family to live with her, and his wife, unable to bear the shame, drank bleach and took her own life. When Ed heard this, his curiosity about where the woman was buried grew intense, and he began planning to dig up her grave that night. But Bernice had no idea. The scandal had spread all over town, and the man, unable to handle the public outrage, left her. Since then, Bernice had relied on anti-anxiety pills to sleep. At that moment, she noticed Ed's gaze once again drop to her chest. Instead of getting angry, she seemed to enjoy the attention. But what truly caught Ed's interest was not her body. It was the lace-trimmed bra she was wearing, something he had never seen before. Bernice smiled bitterly and explained that the bra was a gift from that man. Although it always reminded her of painful memories, she still wore it out of habit.
You think I could wear it?
I beg your pardon?
Bernice misunderstood Ed's look, thinking he was flirting, so she removed the lace bra right there and handed it to him. Later, she took Ed back to her house. Ed put on the bra and turned around, asking her if he looked beautiful.
Come to Mama. If you bow me good, Eddie Gein, I'll let you wear my panties.
Bernice was delighted by his behavior and told him to go home, pack his belongings, and move in with her. Ed went back to his house and stood before his mother's remains to say goodbye. When Augusta's spirit heard her son was leaving, she seemed to erupt in fury. She shouted that Bernice was the town's infamous bus that every man had ridden. She accused Bernice of committing adultery with a married man, driving a devout Christian woman to her death, and carrying a terrible disease herself. In Augusta's eyes, Bernice was a demon from hell, whose only purpose in approaching Ed was to spread corruption. Her words shattered Ed's resolve. When he returned to the hardware store, Bernice had lovingly prepared a new bra as a gift for him. But her mother's warnings still echoed in his mind, and Ed finally changed his decision, telling Bernice he didn't want to be with her anymore. Bernice, heartbroken, asked him to leave. The moment she turned around, a gunshot rang out. In Ed's distorted perception, the blood that splattered seemed to turn green, confirming what his mother had said. Bernice was indeed a demon. As he dragged her body away, Ed remembered he still needed money for his wedding with Adeline, so he took the cash register from the shop before leaving. Back home, Ed cut off Bernice's head and then split the lower part of her body in half. He called Adeline over and proudly showed her his creation. Adeline, thrilled, pulled out her camera and began photographing each part of the corpse. In the quiet of the night, Ed took out a piece of skin that he had once removed from a dead woman's face and placed it over his head like a wig. As soft music played from the record player, he danced gracefully in front of the mirror. For a brief, delusional moment, he felt as if he had truly become the dead woman.
Hello, Ed.
I got some extra deer meat if you'd like.
Well, only if you'll join us.
Though Ed often carried a hunting rifle, he had never shot a single living creature. Monsters are rarely born that way. They are shaped, bit by the world around them. And in Ed's life, the most defining influence came from his fiancée, Adeline, who was also treated as an outsider by the town. Adeline's mother was a deeply devout Catholic, and her faith had become the very center of her life. But Adeline despised that suffocating control. She longed for the freedom and glamour of the big city, convinced that this decaying and narrow-minded town was never where she truly belonged. She dreamed of becoming a true city woman, one who smoked, drank, and kept casual relationships with different men. While dating Ed, Adeline never stopped seeing other men, believing that this was the true freedom and charm of a modern woman, the lifestyle that people in big cities should embrace. To her mother, Enid, these actions were nothing short of moral decay and betrayal. She urged her daughter to stay home more often, to learn housework, to stop wandering around, saying only then could she find a dependable man and build a stable family. But Adeline responded with sarcasm and disdain.
A lot of good it did you. Where's your man, Mother?
I'll pretend you didn't say that. I had to raise you! Take a job running classifieds down at the newspaper, doing it all alone. This is the life I'm trying to spare you, Adeline.
Well, I'm not doing it. I'm leaving town anyways.
Instead of restraining herself, she became even bolder and joined Ed in photographing the gruesome aftermath of Bernice's death. Ed, filled with excitement, tried to be intimate with his fiancée and confessed that he was ready to become a father. But the once passionate Adeline turned cold and rejected him, leaving Ed deeply confused and disappointed, unable to understand why she had suddenly changed. A few days later, Adeline attended her aunt's funeral, wearing a striking bright red dress. Amid the solemn and mournful atmosphere, she suddenly burst into laughter. Her aunt had died of a heart attack after being driven to fury by her own son. Adeline's inappropriate behavior enraged her mother, who harshly scolded her for being shameless. But Adeline didn't care at all. She declared that she would no longer be her mother's burden. She decided to leave the small town forever and move to New York to start a new life. Before leaving, she invited Ed out for dinner, telling him she planned to seek out the crime scene photographer she once mentioned. If she managed to stay and find work in New York, she hinted that Ed could come join her later. She said that city was full of opportunities, unlike this lifeless and suffocating place. Casually, she mentioned that New York had large tanneries, something that might interest Ed, given his strange obsession with leather. Adeline handed Ed a book written by a transgender author. Just flipping through the photos inside made Ed's heart race with restless curiosity. Then she took out a comic book about forbidden stories of female Nazi officers, successfully drawing Ed into a twisted world of blood and obsession, making him forget the pain of her impending departure. But on the way home from dinner, Ed gathered his courage and told Adeline he wanted to be intimate with her. Adeline refused again, even suggesting that he find another girl in town to satisfy his desires. Ed shook his head. He didn't like those girls, and he knew they had never truly liked him either. It could be said that
Maybe you should do it with somebody who can't say no. Somebody dead.
Yeah, I thought about that. I couldn't go through with it.
Why not? Eddie, they're dead.
Adeline bore undeniable responsibility for the monster Ed eventually became. To satisfy Ed's repressed urges, Adeline encouraged him to go to the town cemetery and dig up her recently buried aunt's grave. The next day, Adeline packed her belongings and left, telling her best friend she would never return to that rotten little town. But life in New York was nothing like she had imagined. In the biting winter cold, she shivered on the street, begging a hotel owner to give her a room with heating. The landlady mocked her with biting sarcasm.
Go out and get some money or a man. Otherwise, just deal with it.
Please, I'm gonna freeze to death.
You rented a cold flat. No water, no heat. What? No handout!
Full of hope, Adeline sought out the photographer Ouija, determined to become his assistant. When Ouija saw her, he was surprised, saying he had never met such a devoted fan, someone who could send him 3 letters in a single day. Adeline expressed her admiration for his work, saying her fascination with death made her fearless in the face of blood and horror. Proudly, she pulled out a few photographs she had taken of Bernice's corpse and laid them on the table. However, after looking at them, Ouija coldly stated that she had no real talent for photography, and that those pictures were nothing more than amateurish trash. Crushed by his words, Adeline returned to her hotel and broke down in tears, only to notice that her tears instantly froze on her cheeks. The irritated landlady knocked on her door, scolding her for disturbing the other guests. Angry and humiliated, Adeline demanded a refund, but the woman only mocked her again. In a fit of rage, she took off her high heels and struck the landlady hard, then grabbed her money and fled New York in a hurry. She quietly returned to her hometown and broke down in tears, confessing to her mother the humiliation and failures she had suffered. But Enid, completely disappointed in her daughter, showed no trace of sympathy. Instead, she said coldly that when she was pregnant, she had fallen down the stairs, and perhaps that accident had caused something to be wrong with Adeline from birth, which was why she had done all those disgraceful things that brought shame upon her. She bluntly told Adeline that she wasn't normal and advised her to find a man willing to tolerate her erratic nature while she was still young and attractive. She added that she could only pray her daughter would never give birth to a child as deranged as herself. Heartbroken and hopeless, Adeline went to Ed's house, seeking comfort by trying to be intimate with him. But this time, Ed realized he felt nothing at all.
Can I tell you something honest? You're too warm.
He had long since become obsessed with the cold, smooth touch of the dead. And to make Adeline feel the same sensation, Ed asked her to sit in a bathtub filled with ice-cold water. One day, the town's deputy sheriff, Frank, realized that his mother had gone missing. A deep sense of dread washed over him, and he hurried to the hardware store to investigate, only to find a long trail of blood smeared across the floor. He couldn't believe his mother had become a victim of violence. After searching the entire shop, he discovered a neatly wrapped gift box on a backroom table. A small tag hung from it, reading, "To Ed." Frank immediately called Sheriff Schley, and the two of them rushed to Ed's farmhouse. When they pushed the door open, they were met with a room filled with fluttering corpse moths. Inside the cabinet at the back of the room lay several human skin masks and fragments of mutilated flesh. On the stove, something was boiling in a large iron pot. Sheriff Schley lifted the lid and froze. It looked like a human heart. Soon, the entire house was swarming with police officers. Everyone stood speechless, horrified by the grotesque display of human skin artifacts scattered throughout the house. Not long after, Ed's pickup truck pulled up to the front gate. He showed no panic at all. Instead, he stepped out of the truck calmly, even smiling at the officers staring in disbelief.
What's everybody doing here?
Sheriff Schley grabbed Ed by the collar and demanded to know what he had done. Ed's face remained blank, as though he truly didn't understand why he was being arrested. Meanwhile, in the shed behind the house, Frank finally found his mother's dismembered body, and he completely broke down. Ed, still unaware of the horror he had caused, told the sheriff he wanted to go home and talk to his mother about what had happened because he wasn't sure what was going on.
Your mother is dead.
Frank, trembling with fury, lunged at Ed and punched him repeatedly, shouting that he had to pay for what he'd done. But Ed didn't understand why he was being hit.
What'd you do that for? You and me always got along.
When the forensic team tried to reassemble Bernice's remains, they discovered that most of the bones from Ed's house didn't belong to her at all. The pieces of bone, skin, and even the human faces had all been stolen from different women's graves. As news of the case spread, Ed's crimes shocked the entire country. His fiancée, Adeline, became the focus of the media frenzy as reporters swarmed around her, desperate to uncover clues about Ed's past. Adeline tried everything she could to distance herself from the case. She claimed she had no knowledge of Ed's gruesome acts, insisting she was just an ordinary woman with no connection to his twisted world. However, the reporters still maintained a burning interest in her. Under the spotlight, Adeline began to feel as if she were becoming a star.
All right.
In the interrogation room, Ed faced the police's questioning with an unexpectedly calm demeanor. He admitted that he had never actually gone hunting because no one had ever taught him how to do it. But Sheriff Schley clearly remembered that Ed's neighbors often mentioned the venison he gave them, praising its tenderness and flavor. If Ed truly couldn't hunt, then where had that meat come from? Was it cut from corpses he had dug up or from people he had murdered himself? When questioned, Ed could give no clear answer. He simply shook his head and said he hadn't killed anyone. To verify his claims, the police strapped him to a lie detector. They started with simple questions about numbers to make sure the machine was working. Everything appeared normal. Then the real interrogation began.
Did you kill Bernice Warden?
I can't say as I did.
Did you kill your brother, Ed?
He died in a fire. Asphyxiation, they said.
He's telling the truth.
It was the first time the police had ever seen a case where the lie detector completely failed on someone. After multiple evaluations, the psychiatrists confirmed the result. Ed was so mentally disturbed that he was unfit for prison and even too unstable to stand trial. He was immediately transferred to a comfortable state asylum. This outcome enraged Deputy Frank, who felt it was deeply unjust. He believed Ed should have paid the price for his crimes. To make up for the victims' families, he suggested to Sheriff Schley that Ed's belongings be sold at a charity auction to provide compensation. Although the sheriff disapproved, Frank went ahead and organized the sale himself. Crowds of curious onlookers flooded into Ed's old home, eager to see and purchase his eerie, macabre possessions. People whispered to one another as they pointed at blood-stained needles and strange objects still tangled with human hair, as if attending a grotesque museum exhibition. Even Ed's car was put up for auction. But when Frank returned to the farmhouse, he found it engulfed in flames, the entire building reduced to ash. Only the car he had driven out for promotion survived. At this point, Adeline appeared entirely in the role of a reporter.
Going to and from the graveyard or any of his numerous crimes. How many bodies did he transport in it? How many Sunday drives with his dear dead mother? And as a victim,
skillfully stirring up the crowd's emotions and claiming it was her duty to help people seek compensation. Meanwhile, inside the asylum, Ed lived a peaceful and carefree life, blissfully unaware that he had become a national legend of horror. It wasn't until the female director personally handed him $300 that he realized he had become a celebrity. That was the remaining amount after selling his belongings and compensating the victims' families. Ed used the money to ask the hospital director to buy him 3 amateur radios and a set of women's underwear. Through the radio, he got in touch with the Nazi female officer who was imprisoned in a jail. Every night they shared their secrets over the airwaves, finding comfort as if they were kindred spirits.
So whose orders were you following? Are you sad about what you did?
Faced with this question, Ed fell into a long silence. No response came back over the radio waves for a long time. That very night, the Nazi female officer hanged herself. Ed also sent a radio message to the famous transgender woman Christine, calling himself her admirer, and saying that he had many confusions he hoped she could help him resolve. He confessed that since childhood he had felt that a certain part of his body didn't belong to him. Christine told him that her transition was a choice of free will, not born out of fear or repression, as his seemed to be. Ed often fantasized about being a woman. He even peeled the skin from female corpses and draped it over his own body, believing that wearing their flesh made him more like one. Christine pointed out that this was not a recognition of identity, but rather a projection of desire and a distortion of the mind. Ed had grown up under his mother's suffocating control, deprived of any normal connection with women, which led him to seek comfort in such a grotesque substitute.
No Gein man should lay with a woman.
Goodbye, Ed.
Not long after, a strict new female director arrived at the asylum, and she forbade Ed from dressing in women's clothes. In a burst of anger, Ed grabbed a chainsaw and killed Roz. But the next morning, when he stepped out of his room, Roz was alive and unharmed. With the doctor's help, Ed finally realized the truth. The radios he thought he had mailed had never been sent out. They were all still stored in the asylum's supply room. Patients were never allowed to use such devices. The radio left in Ed's room was there because his room had no power outlet to plug it into.
Then who was I talking to?
The nurse said it was a woman you were talking to.
Mister, I do not think that you and I are alike at all. No, not at all. Okay? And why did they put you in a mental hospital, Ed? What did you do?
Both voices he had heard through the static had belonged to himself. He had been talking to no one but his own mind. Ed couldn't understand what was happening to him. He questioned whether he was even human, whether he truly was the monster everyone said he was. The doctor explained his condition. Much of what Ed saw and heard didn't exist in reality. He couldn't remember the things he had done, believed he could somehow bring his mother back, and thought that wearing a woman's skin could transform him into one. All of these symptoms pointed to a single diagnosis: schizophrenia. It was a complex brain disorder, one that medical science still didn't fully understand. In simple terms, the line between his inner world and the real world had collapsed. Everything he had ever seen, heard, read, or imagined shattered into fragments that reflected endlessly back at him, leaving him unable to tell what was real and what was illusion.
Is that why I do the things that I do? Like why I dug up all those ladies? It killed Bernice and my friend Mary Hogan.
And I'm sorry that you've suffered for as long as you have.
The doctor prescribed him medication. After taking it, Ed's mind finally found peace for the first time in years, but he never realized that the killings he had committed during his delusional state would later inspire other disturbed individuals. Investigators discovered that several captured murderers idolized Ed, forming groups that resembled fan clubs devoted to him. Authorities decided to speak with Ed, believing he might understand these people's psychology better than anyone else. At first, Ed knew nothing about them, but soon he began following news reports and reading the letters sent by his so-called admirers. Not long after, he informed the police that the killer of several young girls was driving a stolen Volkswagen Beetle. The police were stunned. How could he possibly know that? Ed explained that the killer had sent a letter to his friend Richard, who then passed it along to him. By analyzing the weather descriptions in the letter, Ed deduced that the man was in Florida, the very place where the victims had been found. A few days later, when the TV news reported that the serial killer had been caught, Ed felt genuinely happy, finally having done something good to help others in the remainder of his life. But soon after, Roz came to him with devastating news. Ed had been diagnosed with terminal lung cancer, and the disease had already spread throughout his body. Yet Ed remained calm, even peaceful, as if relieved. When Adeline learned that he didn't have long to live, she came to the hospital to see him. She confessed the dark desires she had kept buried deep inside her heart. She admitted that after reading Ed's story, it awakened something dangerous deep inside her. She handed him a piece of paper with several names on it. She said these people were the ones she had to eliminate.
People I gotta get rid of.
You can't go killing people. I don't like thinking of you doing those things. It isn't who you are.
Who says it isn't? You and me have always been the same, Eddie Gein.
I think maybe we were one and the same. I'm gonna go now, Adeline.
As night fell, and Ed lay fading away, his thoughts drifted back to his memories with his mother. There was no anger in his heart anymore, only a gentle sense of longing. His mother had always believed he was her pride, and at that moment, Ed finally felt at peace. The final image showed a bright spring afternoon. Ed sat beside his mother on the porch while she quietly knitted a sweater, and he sipped his honey tea in silence. This film, based on the life of one of America's most infamous figures, Ed Gein, uses 3 interwoven storylines to dissect the making of a monster. It doesn't just depict horror and violence, but delves into the roots of Ed's twisted upbringing. Under the weight of his mother's extreme religious control and emotional repression, Ed developed a deep conflict toward women, yearning for them, yet fearing them. His fiancée Adeline acted as a dark catalyst, awakening the desires that pushed him from fantasy to grave robbing and human skin rituals. As the boundary between reality and illusion disintegrated, Ed descended completely into madness. In the end, the warm vision of his reconciliation with his mother stood in stark contrast to the horror that came before, symbolizing that all he ever truly wanted was something ordinary, love and acceptance. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.